The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make a lot of noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Nephew. Bye-bye.
Yeah, please take your seat on my way. We're with the edge. It's time to take off. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, September 14th. Friday, September 15th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Hope you had a great day and night as we are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, as we are here for your listening needs 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Now, if you want to follow us, we are all over social media. We're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live on TuneIn, and you can download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Rev Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or join us on Facebook at the official chat room, the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I'll get your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can sign up to become an SOR Space Traveler. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, pick up a t-shirt, poster, stickers. We have the Encounter Online, our paranormal journalism site put together by Everett Thiemer and Eric Markham. Check out my latest blog there as well, and if you've had a sighting that you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We also got great video viewing from Tim Doyle of UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. Now, being Canadian, there is nothing more that I love than hearing a good story about UFOs from north of the 49th parallel. It's not because I'm a homer or am trying to be pro-Canuck. You see, up here, topics such as UFOs aren't big-ticket conversations. They are earmarked with strange smirks or snarky comments. It's just un-Canadian to talk about UFOs or ET contact. But if we go back to 1975, many in the province of Manitoba reported UFOs over their province almost nightly. The string of unprecedented sightings launched the biggest UFO craze in Canadian history, with sightings for well over a year. One object seen again and again was known as Charlie Red Star. Grant Cameron was there. He witnessed Charlie Red Star many times and led tours for others to see for themselves. He caught wind of rumors of nuclear testing south of the Canadian-U.S. border, which might have been the cause of the unexplained phenomena that was sighted in the upper atmosphere. This story was revealed by eyewitnesses, photographers, reporters, and it's Grant Cameron's latest book. Grant, it's almost been over a year since we had you on Spaced Out Radio last, but it's great to have you back on, my friend. How are you?
Well, it's fantastic to be on, Dave. Thanks for inviting a fellow Canadian on to talk some UFOs.
You have been so busy this summer running around the West Coast, the East Coast, lecturing at universities, at other programs, UFO conferences. How do you keep the schedule to find time for little old us?
Well, I'm willing to talk to anybody at any time. I do lots of radio. I don't do as much traveling because, as you know, I was refused entry to the United States, so I don't take honorariums when I go to the United States. I just go down there, and I'm going down there first thing in the morning for one of the few lectures I'm going to give there this year. But it's always kind of a hassle to go into the United States because of their laws on, stealing American jobs and all this kind of stuff. So I do a lot of radio, especially in the last month, because this latest book, Charlie Red Star, went through a publisher. Most of the ones I just self-publish. This one, because I wanted it in Canadian bookstores, because it's cost $17 to ship a book in Canada. You can't really sell them, by mail or anything. So I wanted it in the bookstore, so I went through a publisher, and there was actually a movie option on the book as well. And they wanted it through a publisher, and the publisher made me do the real publicity tour, where I had to write down all the different people that I dealt with and the podcasts and stuff. And so I've been doing probably 2-3 interviews a day for the last month, which is more than I usually do. But it's kind of good to do it sort of by the book. Usually I really don't do that much publicity of my books and stuff like that. But this one I have, and plus they have a U.S. publicist working on the book. So he set up a whole bunch of interviews in the United States, and but that's what I do. That's part of the game. Sometimes you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes you're up till 2 o'clock in the next morning, and that's the game I chose to be in. And I enjoy sort of spreading the word to people, because I think that's probably my mission in life. I had this experience in 1975 that basically ended my life or began my life, however you want to look at it. It changed everything when I had my sighting. And I try to say thank you 3 times every day that I actually got to play in this game, because a lot of people have kind of miserable lives where they don't really do much of anything, and I got to play in what I call the greatest story of all times.
Grant, I want to ask you a little bit of a difficult question, kind of off topic from what we are going to talk about tonight. Yeah. A few weeks ago, just over a month and a half ago, Jim Marrs passed away, legendary writer in this field. And we've been talking a lot about that during this show, about how tragic his passing was, because, he was still relatively young. But when I look at this field, and I see people such as yourself, Stanton Friedman, Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, and many others in this field who've been doing this for relatively decades, there does not seem to be that late 20s, 30s, early 40s crowd ready to fill in, because eventually we're all going to pass away. You know what I'm saying? And it just doesn't seem there's people stepping up to the plate, much like you have, or Stanton has, who was on this show just a couple of nights ago, to take over that type of ufological research. Do you look at that and say, my God, when my time comes, and hopefully a long time, who's going to take over for me?
Yeah, it is a good question. It is. There was a joke made. I was lecturing one time for the New Jersey conference, and the guy who was running the conference, one woman came up to him and said, "Do you have a senior discount?" And he said, "If I had a senior discount, everybody'd get in on a discount." No, we don't have a senior discount. And that's basically, if you see UFO conferences or researching, it's basically older people. And I sort of look at it, there's not much I can really do about it. I sort of look at it like my son, for example. My son's 33 years old, and 34 years old. And anyway, he sort of knows about it. He's had a couple of ghost experiences, so he's but not really into the UFO stuff. And people will ask him, like, your father's retired, what does he do? And then he says, just Google his name. He won't even talk about me, He's sort of like, so the young people, but they're busy making a life. They're busy. And I remember it was like that with me when my son was a pretty good hockey player. And I know I was zipping around every night to a hockey rink. He was on the ice almost every single night. And so I can't really blame the young people. They're sort of into it. And it's sort of, when you get older in life, you start looking back on what it all means. And I think people start to reflect on these kind of issues. Whereas in the younger people, I think they're still, even though they sort of have an interest, they're still more into paying the bills, especially these days with the price of houses and the situation. So I'm really not sure. There's a few out there. There's in Toronto. There was a couple of young kids who were doing some TV stuff. And what I've done in terms of this is tried to move it to a different sort of format that, like, I do a lot of long interviews and a lot of long lectures, and I've sort of moved it away to try to get at the young people's interest, and that is that the vast majority of kids really don't watch long lectures. They don't listen to long interviews. They basically, everybody's on YouTube, and I see you've got a YouTube channel. And so what I've now started to do in terms of my research is I have my White House UFO YouTube channel, and what I do on there is I do short interviews that are short questions that are no longer than 10 minutes long, and I'll take a certain question and I'll just answer the question and put it up on YouTube in maybe 5 minutes, dealing with one thing. So these little segments, so that people aren't forced to sort of wade through a 1 hour YouTube video. Because I know even myself, I can almost never watch anything long or listen to anything long. What I do, the way I do a lot of my research is I actually take, I have a program, and it's on the internet, everyone can get it. You can take a program that basically grabs the MP3s off of YouTube videos. So what I'll do is I'll grab all sorts of podcasts, YouTube videos, and I put them in an MP3 player. And if you ever see me walking around Winnipeg, I basically have a headset on all the time. It doesn't matter where I'm going, and I don't really take car much. I sort of bus and I walk, and I've got this headset going. So I'll go through maybe sometimes 7-8 hours of MP3 audios of various podcasts and people on interviews and stuff like that. And that's the way I do my research. But I think we have to sort of in the field figure out what these young kids are watching. And that's what I figured out, was that they do these little 10-minute YouTube things. And so that's what I'm sort of moving towards, although I still do the other stuff. But maybe, we'll find some way to attract them. There are a few out there, but it is a problem in terms of the field is mostly older people. The one exception I saw was McMinnville, Oregon. They have it's almost like Roswell or like some of these other towns that have sort of built industries around their UFO sightings. They had the famous McMinnville photographs in the 1950s, and they ran a conference. There's an organization there that renovates old schools and turns them into hotels. And the guy who was the archivist for this company suddenly discovered that McMinnville was famous for these photographs, and he decided to run this conference. And they have like a massive turnout in this little tiny town, and they have a huge parade, which is as big as Roswell's parade. But the difference between Roswell and McMinnville is McMinnville, everybody goes to lectures. In Roswell, you can lecture, and I think we were talking about this earlier. You can go to Roswell, and I was lecturing, and it was like, it started, I can't remember, it was like 12 people in the audience, and there was like 25 when it was finished. Like, nobody goes to the lectures. They all go to the parade. And I remember going out of the lecture, and they have a dress up your dog like an alien, and so all these dogs are dressed up in tin foil and stuff. And there was like 50 people at this thing where they're giving the award for the best dog dressed up like an alien. And I'm thinking, like, my goodness, I came across the country to lecture, and there's more people checking out the dog than checking out my lecture.
My goodness, my friend, I went to Provincetown, Massachusetts. At least you got your name on the board. They literally, they put in the magazine for the big article about this. They had, Amy Bruni's name in there, Adam Berry, the ghost hunters who were on television, and then they said yes, and we even have people coming down from Canada.
Yeah, that's the thing. It depends who's running the conference or what their thing is. McMinnville might be a place where I'll suggest they bring you down there, because it's a place where I've never seen an audience like it. There was about it's a big auditorium, so there may have been 400 people, something like that. But it was almost at least half, maybe 3/4 was young kids, high school, in their 20s. I had never seen an audience like it, and I've lectured to a lot of different places. The vast majority of them are much older people, and you'll also see mostly white people. You won't see really any sort of other races in UFO lectures. It's sort of like almost like an exclusive thing, which is maybe part of the problem. That what I say is, a lot of people will talk about the UFO field and the fact that you're not getting disclosure. And I say, basically what it comes down to is that for the vast majority of people, they really aren't that interested in the bottom line issues. They're just interested in the stories. And basically, the way it works to me is in the 19th century. What you did when you wanted entertainment is you'd bring in people with seances, and you'd have these guys who would do seances and bring in dead people and stuff like that. And now we don't do that anymore. Now for entertainment, we have UFO stories. And that when you get right down to it, you have people who aren't as interested as you think they are. They just want to hear a good story. And that's why the disclosure things for a lot of people comes down to just give me the information, just like why are they here, what are they doing, and they don't realize that it's all messaging, that it's a very complex thing, and that it's really got nothing to do with disclosure. Because once you get disclosure, what are you going to do? I mean, does it really change your life? A lot of people think it's really going to change. All the poor people are going to get fed and stuff, and really it's not, because the people who really know now really don't do much. And I'll give you a prime example. One of the things I've been doing I've been chasing this guy for many, many years. His name is Dr. Ronald Pandolfi. And he's been identified as a top scientist in the CIA. He's the guy who that rumored to have briefed Donald Trump, and maybe the last 9 presidents or last 6 presidents he's briefed. And anyway, I've spent a lot of time following this guy, and he's sort of like a liaison to the UFO community. I've got a list of over 24 people that he's dealt with, high-level people like Stephen Greer, Whitley Strieber. He's sort of interacted with all the UFO community and given people material and stuff like that. And he's almost like the liaison where he's leaking this material into the UFO community. And so now the big idea that they're pushing is this portal idea, that there's a portal in Montana. There's one in Salt Lake City. It's sort of a back engineering thing that's been done by Joe Firmridge, who was a big .com executive in the 1990s, put a lot of money into the UFO field, and then sort of dropped out and is back in. And Bigelow's name is thrown into the mix, that he's in this game to do this portal technology. And anyway, his wife, Ronald Pandolfi's wife, her name is Aliha Pandolfi, and she has a master's degree, and she runs the Kashmir Foundation. She runs around the world saving turtles and all sorts of endangered species and stuff like that. Very sharp girl. And she has got this big connection to this portal idea. That the claim is that she's actually from the other side of the portal, and that she controls this portal, and that she helped brief Donald Trump on the portal. And so anyway, she has a meeting, and it's a go-to meeting where they do this live on the internet. And anybody can attend, and you can ask whatever question you want, and she's there. And a guy by the name of Dan Smith, who Ron Pandolfi leaks all his material to. So what he'll do is he'll leak this to Dan Smith. Dan Smith was the puppet. He'll put it out, and then I'm the second puppet, and I repeat what Dan Smith says. And if you phone up Ron Pandolfi, he'll say, no, never said any such thing. And it's this plausible deniability thing. So he puts this kind of stuff out. And the big idea they're putting out now is this idea of the portal. This idea that this consciousness is involved, and that there's there's these beings on the other side, and they want this idea out. So I have this massive list that anybody who wants to be on this list, and it's getting to be pretty big. It's my email address is whitehouseuFO@gmail.com. So people contact me, and then I put them on this list. And whenever they have a go-to meeting, I basically say, okay, this Thursday, 5 o'clock, here's the link. You can go onto this go-to meeting, and you can basically watch the wife of this high-level intelligence guy, who may be with Defense and Director of National Intelligence, CIA. He's very high-level intelligence. He's the guy who's supposedly briefed Trump. And so he's in the room, or he'll be on the phone. He doesn't get involved, but his wife is running these meetings with Dan Smith. So I've got all this, and you'd think that people would be all over this thing, and they would be there and asking questions and demanding stuff and all this sort of stuff. And the most we've ever had is 24 people at a meeting, and they're all my people. They're all off this list. And this list is huge, but almost nobody goes to the meeting. It's like everybody says they're interested in this whole thing, and this is happening right in the open. Like, this is like disclosure right up front, central, on the internet, and almost nobody, like most times there's only about 14 people there. So even though people say they're interested in disclosure, this is an important issue and stuff, when it comes right down to it, a lot of people, they don't have the time. You know, they're busy watching TV, or they've got something else to do, and it's pretty far down their list. Most people, I think, if you come right down to it, they just want a good story. They want to hear a story, and that is maybe why this latest book, sadly, it's the book that how I started, and it's just basically a book on the sightings from this small town in Carmen, Manitoba, where all this stuff happened for about a year and a half, and I just go through the whole thing and I tell all these stories. I saw this. I had these 5 close encounters. I tell them just my stories, and all these other people and police officers and principals of schools, and how the National Enquirer came down and went around. We went and interviewed all these people. And this is sort of like the most popular book there is, because that's what people want. They want a story. They want to hear a good story. When I write books on that I think are really important, like I did the book on Inspired, where I do a book on the whole idea of creative inspiration in music, in art, in Nobel Prizes, in science, that a lot of people think that, people rationally figure out stuff. And basically what I do through this book is I have all these different chapters on all these different fields. And I say, no. The Wizard of Oz came in an instantaneous download to this guy as he's reading his kids a bedtime story. All the Harry Potter books came in an instantaneous download as J.K. Rowling was going into London on a train, and she fell asleep and woke up, and all 7 books were flooding into her head, and how the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, the famous Alcoholics Anonymous, at least the 4 chapters where helped the guy who wrote the thing got help from a 15th century monk by the name of Boniface, and he got it off on a Ouija board. And I tell all these bizarre stories about where all these ideas came from, but that book really didn't sell anything. People just, they weren't really interested. They just wanted these, the UFO stories are much more interesting. When it gets a little complex and it gets into theoretical stuff as to why this is an important story, to me, I see the people starting to head for the door. They just want a good story. So that maybe it's a long answer to your question about where the young people have gone, but it's a kind of a field where I've actually said in the last couple of lectures that I'm actually still wanting to get out of the UFO field. I find it very sort of it's got a very negative vibration to it. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of, just negative vibration. And the whole point is that whether it's true or not, a lot of people will defend it and say, oh, it's true. This stuff that we're talking about is true, whether it's conspiracies or whatever it is. I say, well, it may be true, but if it's like walking through a minefield, and the buddy in front of you blows up, he steps on a landmine and blows up, and you get covered with his body parts. I mean, that may be true. That may be a true story. But if you run that thing through your head over and over 1,000 times a day, I mean, within a month, you're going to be sitting in a room with a gun in your mouth, ready to kill yourself, because you can't take that negative vibration. And so that's what I'm trying to get out of the UFO field. And I keep getting dragged back in, almost like it's part of this game that they want to drag me back into this thing. And the part of it is this whole thing that I get sort of disillusioned in that majority of people aren't really into the real heavy issues. Like, for example, I'll give you another example. People always say, oh, we want disclosure and we got to get this, and why isn't the government giving us disclosure? And I always remind people that there was, in the 1990s, there was a group in Washington, D.C., who was picketing outside the White House for UFO disclosure. And the most people they ever had at a demonstration was 19 people. So if you're the government and you're sitting behind the big fence at the White House and you look out and see 19 people, you can either decide, well, I'm going to gain 19 votes if I go along with these people, or I'm going to lose 19 million votes by getting on this crazy issue. You can sort of understand why the government really hasn't come to our defense, because for most people, it's just an interesting story. And Stephen Greer mentioned this, and James Fox mentioned this when they went up to the Hill and they talked to the congressmen and the senators, and they said to them, why don't you do something? Like, and they said, we believe you. We back you, but you got to give us some cover. You can't make us go out there without any cover. This is not a politically correct issue. And once you get a parade going, we will join the parade. We will lead the parade, but we need some cover. We need to have some support with large numbers of people in order for us to take up this issue. And I think that's what sort of evades a lot of the UFO community. That for a lot of people, it's just almost like in the 19th century, where somebody's pulling in dead people in a séance, and people get interested, and as soon as the story is over, they just go back to their regular life. And I guess in a way you can't blame them, because people have to make a living. I'm retired now. I really don't need the money. I don't really care. I can sort of do this full time, and I can go to the United States and lecture for free, and it really doesn't bother me. To me, it's like almost like an obsession, because I had these close-up sightings that sort of just flipped me off the edge of the earth, and I realized how important this was as an issue, a philosophical the implications of what it means towards reality and all this kind of stuff. So to me, it's I'm obsessed with it, but I can sort of, I guess, feel for the people who, like my son, really aren't really that interested at all.
In the top of my monologue, I had mentioned that in Canada, the topic of ufology seems to be still quite taboo, even though there are a lot of people who have had the experience, Grant. Why up here, comparatively to the United States, is it still such a keep your mouth shut type topic? Haven't we grown up from that yet?
Yeah, you've got the numbers exactly right. There is only one UFO conference in Canada, and that's in Toronto, and it's getting pretty big. But that's the only one. When you go to the United States, I mean, every state has at least one conference. I mean, everybody's running these conferences. I think it may have to do more with the personality of Americans. Americans are sort of they're willing to take up these bizarre issues. Canada, it's like everybody's into hockey. I don't really find. Maybe it's because I'm sort of a little more famous than the average person who's talking. Like if you're just a person on the street and you go talk UFOs, you may get hassled. People know me, and they know you're not going to hassle this guy, because he'll just sort of talk until you fall over. And that if he's lectured around the world, if he's lectured around the world, maybe he knows what he's talking about. So people will sort of not really bring up the issue with me, or I'll be at a cocktail party or at a birthday party or something where there's a lot of people, and there's always somebody in the room that knows that I'm into UFOs. And what you'll see, instead of the bad negative stuff, is somebody will come and say, "Oh, you're into UFOs," and they'll start asking you questions. And after about 5 minutes, you'll see that a lot of the room is sort of gravitated away from us. That suddenly we're by ourselves, and all these other people, or even my girlfriend. I've told this story numerous times. I mean, my girlfriend, when I start talking, she goes to the other side of the room and talks to somebody else. I mean, she has no interest whatsoever. So I'm not sure that it's a thing where Canadians are against the issue. It's just like it's a different personality in the United States. Americans are, it's like the weird same thing with college football. Like, why are Americans into this college football where you go to Penn State University and they got 99,000 people at a Penn State football game when there's only like 20,000 people in state college? They come from all over the state. It's just this bizarre sort of culture where they're into this stuff, or like the same as the 4th of July. I mean, in Canada, we have, Canada Day, and it's like, we'll go watch the fireworks, but nobody really gets into it. In the United States, they're like, God bless America, and it's like big parties, and it's like, the whole place shuts down on July the 4th. I think it's more to do with the culture. The Canadians are more laid back. I don't think it's that they're really against it. They just they don't get involved in going to big events or parties and stuff, except when it comes to hockey, or maybe even football. Not even football, but hockey. That's when you get the sort of the big interest, or rock bands would be the same as in the States. But the States is a different world altogether than Canada. It's just really bizarre. Like, I'm going to Ohio tomorrow, and they're bringing in 3 speakers from around the United States and Canada for just a state UFO group. So, I mean, they've got to have some pretty good support to be bringing in 3 outside speakers to talk for their yearly event or whatever it is, and that you'd never see in Canada. Like, you're in BC, I don't know what it's like there. I know even in Vancouver, I lectured in Vancouver. This was about this would be a month ago, 3 weeks ago, or a month ago, and Vancouver's a big place. And basically, and I'm kind of sort of well known. I spoke there on the big tour, the big UFO tour thing that went across Canada. And there was only about, at this event, it was at a house, there was maybe 15 people there or whatever. But that's Vancouver with, millions of people. And you'd think, well, man, there'd be all sorts of people. And they really don't have a group in Vancouver. They have like a C5 group, but maybe it's because they're so far apart from each other in Vancouver that to go to a meeting, they have to travel for an hour to go to a meeting. But I was kind of surprised that there was that little support. In Winnipeg, we have a group that I started, which has about 40 people a month, I think. It's got over 400 on the list after about 2 years. But no more than 40 people are showing. We had Linda Howe last month. They asked me, can I get Linda Howe? I said, yeah, I can basically get anybody for this group. So they wanted Linda Howe. She was the big name. And they got this big, huge room that held 150 people or whatever. And it was 40 people. I mean, it was like Linda Howe, 40 people. That's all it attracted. And so even in Toronto, I remember that I was pushing them really hard in Toronto because I'm big time into experiencers now. I say that if you really want to know what's going on, you got to talk to the people who are actually interacting with the beings, not seeing stuff flying around in the sky, which I've seen, but somebody who's actually interacting with the beings and says they've got a download in their head and that at one point during their experience, like 40% of them say they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And you get these patterns of really, really important stuff that these people are giving us. And so in Toronto, I lectured like at this conference, and a couple times I lectured there. And I would come there and I would, of course, be talking about experiencers. And then these people would come up to me and they'd say, oh, I had this experience and I've never been able to tell anybody. And I'd say, have you got a group here where you guys can, we in Winnipeg, we call it Experiencers Anonymous. It's like an AA group. Like you can go there, you can sit in the back of the room, say nothing. Don't talk to anybody and say, well, these people are all crazy. I'm not the same as these people. And then in like AA, 6 months later, someone will tell you a story and you'll go like, oh man, I'm not crazy. I mean, I'm one of these people. And you'll sort of then start talking. So that in Toronto, I said to them, don't you have a group like this? And they said, no. And so when I'd go to the only big conference in Canada, and on Fridays, they'd have an experiencer group where people could come in and they could talk about this. And it runs for the whole Friday thing. And there's like 100 people in the room or whatever. And I started making this speech. And I said, I mean, this is Toronto. I mean, you're supposed to be the center of the world or whatever they think they are. And I said, come on. I mean, you haven't even got an experiencer group. You got all these people. Every time I come to Toronto, I get inundated with these people who are telling these experiences about interacting with beings and getting downloads and stuff like this. And I say, they've got no place to go. Somebody has to start a group. Now they've started a group, and I don't know what their numbers are. I'm sure they're not even close to what Winnipeg's numbers are, but that's the sort of the problem. And that's, except for that, there are really very few groups. There's a dowsing group in Calgary that I lecture at every once in a while, but there really are no groups. Forget about conferences. It's just something that I think it's got more to do with the Canadians' laid back attitude than it does for the participating in this kind of stuff. Because it's the same thing in the United States when it comes to books. I mean, there are only a couple of UFO books in Canada that are written by Canadians. In the United States, like everybody's doing books, they're self-publishing, and it's like they're just like a different sort of driven people who are into this kind of stuff, and everybody's doing this kind of stuff. It really amazes me some of the numbers that they can draw to some of these events, like Consciousness Expo in Los Angeles. It has like, somebody told me 30,000 people are at this thing. I mean, it's just massive. They have the biggest hotel in LA where they run this thing because, there's so many people show up there over these 3 or 4 days. And Contact in the Desert is a couple thousand people. And then you have UFO Congress in Phoenix, which is 1,500 people registered, and just these massive, massive numbers of people that it just reminds me of the 4th of July. Like they're just big time into all this kind of stuff, and let's go to these things, and everybody dresses up, and they got the costumes, and they buy the books, and everybody's selling crystals, and in Canada it's like, well, when's the next hockey game? That's all everybody's really concerned about.
I somehow don't disagree with that, though. You know, I mean, I'm already prepared for hockey season right now. I mean, if it's not aliens, it's hockey. I mean, that's just the way it has to be, unless you're in Saskatchewan, where you put a watermelon on your head minus 10 degrees and go to the football field.
Yeah.
And we got a couple of listeners who do that from Saskatchewan every single week. But when it comes to the way we deal with things, because we have had some important sightings here.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, there is what you wrote about, Charlie Red Star in Carman, Manitoba. Now, if you want to get into hockey, home of Eddie Belfour, Stanley Cup champion.
That's right.
Absolutely. We have Shag Harbor, which would be Canada's version of Roswell. Plus, we have other situations that have happened, even in my town locally, where Miriam Delicato back in 1988 was taken literally about a 10-minute drive from me. And, you know, she and I have met up in town here. And, you know, she wants to come back here, and I would love to see, like, my community kind of put a little marker there for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though they probably won't, because that's too Canadian. You know, but why, when we have some amazing stories, are they just kind of thrown under the rug?
Yeah. It may have to do, again, with, as well as researchers, that there aren't really many big-time researchers in Canada. The United States, they have a fair number more. And I've got to take, credit or responsibility for the fact that the Carman story never got done, was because Carman is as big a story as any, whether it's Roswell or McMinnville or any of these places. And people will say, well, there's people reading the book in the last month or so, and they would say, I can't believe it. I didn't even know this happened. And I'm going, well, this was a big story in 1975 in Winnipeg, all across Manitoba. Everybody knew because the National Enquirer was here. It was a big story. And it was almost like the Roswell story, that in 1947, Roswell was a big story, and it went away after about a couple days. And nobody talked about Roswell. In fact, nobody even used the name, because the name was invented in the 1980s. When Bill Moore wrote the book, The Roswell Incident. And that's when it became famous. And that's almost the same thing as Carman, is that most of the people in Carman, I had a woman, I was doing a book signing last night on the book at the big bookstore here in Winnipeg. And there was a woman there who came to me and she says, I've lived in Carman for 9 years. And she says, I've never heard of this story. And I said, well, I have to take, responsibility for not putting the story out. Because what happened was I did the story in 75, 76. I did the investigation. 77, I had got the book, and there was a woman whose husband ran the airport there. She helped me put the book together. We typed it all up and got it in all the photographs and put it into Toronto. And nobody wanted to publish the book. And the Winnipeg publisher said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. And I went, it's a waste of time. And I went, gave the book to my sister, and I was even pointing, my sister was at this book signing last night, and I said, if it had been not for my sister, this book would never have gotten out. Nobody would ever have heard the story of Carman again, because my sister, she's like the, I make the joke, she's like the family hoarder. She collects everything. She's got everything. She's the historian. She's got literally everything about everything. She knows the answer to everything that ever happened in the family. So she kept this in her library. And then like 30 or 35 years later, she comes back and says, remember you gave me this thing? And I'm looking at the manuscript and I'm going, whoa, I don't even remember even writing the whole manuscript. I know I'd done a couple of chapters. I'd written a little bit, but I don't remember the manuscript being finished. And it was all bound. Maybe she bound it or something, but it was like this bound manuscript. And I'm going, whoa. So I told this woman that for 9 years, I said, well, I take responsibility for this, because when I didn't get it published in 77, I just said, well, this is a waste of time. And I put it on the side, and I started to chase the Canadian government, the U.S. presidents and stuff. And I became famous for doing the U.S. presidents or consciousness or stuff like this. But nobody knew, even my close friends who saw the book and said, I didn't know this happened. I didn't know you were, they knew I'd had a sighting there, but they didn't know that there was this big story that had happened. And so maybe now it'll sort of pick up. So I think the researchers have to sort of take responsibility for pushing the issue, where in a town where this major industry could actually start over this thing, Nothing happened because I didn't publicize the book. I just let the story fade away, and most of the people in the town weren't even aware that this thing had occurred like 42 years ago. And in the States, everybody's sort of in a business, and these small towns are all doing, some sort of tourist thing. And so a lot of the Americans, it's like the capitalism thing. It's like, well, we can make some money out of this thing. And so the town starts, some little fair or something like that to push this thing. And in Canada, we don't really do that, except, we have all the towns where we have like, somebody's got a mosquito, a big, huge mosquito outside the town, or some fish or something like this, like Kenora has the big fish outside the town or whatever, like a statue thing, where that sort of seems to be our thing. And we have these sort of major sightings that maybe we just got to catch up, because the one from if you remember the one from '67 at Falcon Lake, there was a second book done on that. Chris Rakowski did it with the son of the guy who was actually burned. This is the famous Michalak case in Falcon Lake in '67. And I heard that when they had a big festival out there on the, I think it was the 50th anniversary. Yeah, it was the 50th anniversary of the event, and it was huge numbers out there. And I heard that the book thing, I had about 45 people or whatever. And apparently when they did the book signing for that book, it was, they had to basically take half the store out, and there was like hundreds of people there for the book signing. So it's maybe a thing where Canadians aren't that big into, pushing business, pushing the latest thing to make money and stuff like that. And so maybe this Carmen thing will take off. I know the thing with the Falcon Lake thing, that has sort of taken off. Now, whether they're going to have the festival again next year or whatever, but I guess we can just basically do the same. But we don't have that many researchers. Like in Saskatchewan, there's maybe one researcher. I don't really do the sightings, but there aren't that many researchers in Canada. In the United States, people are sort of, there's a lot more researchers. You have the big MUFON group. In Canada at one point, we even had a hard time getting someone to run the MUFON thing for Canada. And there's somebody in Winnipeg, I don't even know who the guy is that runs the MUFON group here in Winnipeg. They said he was going to come to one of my meetings, but I haven't seen the guy yet. So maybe this bill is a bit disjointed, maybe again, because we're so, the other thing that just popped in my mind is that we're so separated in Canada. We're so far away from each other. We have such a small population basis that I tell, like when we interviewed Linda Howe, I said to Linda, Linda, you got to remember that you're talking to a Winnipeg group here that I would say 95 or 96% of the people in this audience have never been to a UFO conference, because the only place you're going to go is you're going to go to Toronto, which is a 2-day drive, or you're going to go to Eureka Springs, which I know because we went there last year was 20-hour drive. Or you can go to Laughlin, Nevada. I'm there in November, and that's like a 2.5-day drive. And everything from Winnipeg is like a 2-day drive. And most people just will not travel that far to go to a UFO conference. So the vast majority of people in this group, in fact, I could name them on one hand, the people who've been to a UFO conference, most of them have never traveled. They've never, so they don't even, they've seen Linda maybe on Facebook or on YouTube or, seen something like that, but they've never seen her in person. So I said to Linda, you got to remember this. These people, we're in the middle of nowhere here. I mean, just even to go to Minneapolis that's the closest sort of major city, and that's an 8-hour drive for us. So most Canadians really don't do that much sort of traveling. Whereas in the United States, if you're in California, I mean, there's every weekend, there's a major UFO paranormal conference somewhere within about 3 or 4 hours where you can drive, and these people sort of get into it. Or in Boulder, Colorado, places like that. I call it Consciousness, Colorado. It's just the most bizarre place. I mean, every single day there's all these go-to meetings. There's about, I don't know how many groups on the Book of Miracles. There's like 15 of them. When I was there, it was like, oh, we're going to this meeting, and then we're going to this Chandler guy in the afternoon. And it was just this one bizarre event after another, because I was there for about a week, and they were taking me for all these different events. And Winnipeg, there's nothing. Like, there's the one UFO meeting once a month, and there's one sort of a spiritualist meeting. But other than that, I mean, it's it's not like the United States. The United States is a different kettle of fish altogether. I mean, they're not weird people, but they're different than Canadians. That's for sure. They're, much more into business, much more into these conferences, especially in California. California is just totally bizarre. Like I lectured at the Ions thing, and then I got this sort of angry email from Lorian Fenton, who runs the big in San Jose, and big UFO group there. And I remember there was huge numbers when I was there, 60 or 70 people. She said, "You didn't stop. You could have lectured here." And I said, "Well, I was only there for like one day. And I knew you were there." And then this other woman runs this big spiritualist group. She wanted me to lecture. And so in this one place, there was 3 groups that wanted me to lecture in like this one, say within an hour drive of each of them. And in Canada, we're just so spread out that that may be part of the problem as well. But we do, I think, have many more sort of high level people. Like we've got Stanton Friedman, who's done, I don't know how many books he's done. I've done 6 or 7 books. Chris Rakowski here in Winnipeg has done half a dozen books. So we have produced some sort of major people who are on sort of the world tour type thing, where we go various places, and we do have, as you pointed out, we do have some very famous sightings. You have the big one in your town there that I knew about, and we've had a couple big ones in Manitoba, and then a couple that again we didn't even publicize that were in the book. People may not even know this. When the Manitoba thing was going on, there was also huge numbers of sightings in 75, 76 going on in Minnesota and in Wisconsin and in Ontario. And those sightings were never publicized. And those were some of the most bizarre sightings of all times, because what was happening in Ontario. And I remember the National Enquirer was here, and then he would say, I got to fly to Wisconsin. I got to go, something happened there. And then he'd fly to Wisconsin, he'd fly back. And then he'd say, I got to go to Ontario, and he'd fly to Ontario. And what was happening in Ontario is these triangles were taken out of the earth. It was the most bizarre thing. They were about 15 feet on a side, and it was triangles of earth about 9 inches. I can't remember exactly what the depth was, 9 inches. And it was like this earth was taken out in a triangle and placed beside the triangle. And it was just the most bizarre thing. And they had photographs of all this stuff and stuff like that. And that was never really publicized. I had it in the book, and I had to take it out because of the length. But those kind of things were going on. And most people in Canada really don't know those sort of really bizarre events that took place. Well, in fact, most people don't even know the bizarre events that took in Carmen. And Carmen potentially was one of the biggest flaps that ever occurred in North America. It was absolutely massive. There was, and there was films taken. There was TV crews out there. It was a big time event. And because I couldn't get it published through a Canadian publisher, I just sort of dropped it and went on to another career. And sort of people know me for the presidents and all this kind of stuff. And most people don't know that I was sort of front and center to this massive number of sightings that happened in 1975.
Grant, we only have about 3 minutes before we have to go to break here. Do you see the fact that, we're moving closer to disclosure, not to get into the whole disclosure discussion, but do you see more people starting to open up to come out with their stories now, once they feel comfortable that they are in a surroundings, that they could feel that they're not going to be judged?
Oh, absolutely. 75, when I wrote the Charlie Red Star book, Dundurn wanted me to get a release from everybody who'd been quoted in the book. And basically it was like all these transcripts. National Enquirer, we ran around and everything was on transcripts. And everything was a quote in the book. And I said, well, number one, half the people are dead, or more are dead now. And number two, nobody in that town wanted to be on the record. Absolutely nobody. I mean, there was a couple, and they got into big trouble in terms of being ridiculed and stuff. And everybody else just shut up. And people were squealing on each other, and that's how I found out about these people. And I would tell the story. So I had to change every name in the book and to protect these people. And now it's different. I mean, if it had happened in Carmen today, it would have been a different story. would have been much more of a circus, much more people on the record, TV and stuff. It's a completely different world than 1975. I'll absolutely guarantee you. It is much more open than it was. People really aren't that ridiculed. It's not you're not as seen as crazy as you were in 1975. 1975 is a completely different world, and that's one of the hardest things I always try to convince people is that if you think what happened now happened then, you are completely wrong. It was a completely different world. Sightings were different. What was happening was different, and the attitude was completely different from 1975 to now. It's much more open than it was then. Most people realize now there's 2 trillion galaxies. They know there's all these exoplanets. They know that famous people have seen UFOs, and you're not quite the crackpot you were in 1975.
On that note, we are going to get you to hold on here because I do have a ton of more questions for you as we go to hour number 2. We're going to talk a lot about Charlie Red Star, what made you write the book, what made you get it published, and the real story behind the event. You know, coming from a family where my sister was born in Manitoba, my mother was born in Manitoba, I know it's a very religious type of a province. You know,
yeah.
a lot of Mennonite communities around there. And I'm sure as we come out of the break that you could tell us that maybe that's the reason why there was so much hesitation about people speaking back then, because of the strong Mennonite community and the ties to the church, because that always seems to happen. But Grant, you hold on. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We're talking with Grant Cameron tonight, legendary, and I mean legendary, ufologist from Winnipeg, Manitoba. His book, Charlie Red Star, you can go to any major bookstore, pick it on up, as well his website, presidentialufos.com. I highly suggest you check it out because this man is brilliant. He is connected, and his information is just far out. Far out. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every 3rd Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter Online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The 3rd Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Four Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we are going to do a preview to the Forest Moon Paracon that I will be speaking at on September 23rd. All the speakers are going to join us, including the man who's putting it together, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Once again, that's down in Concrete, Washington, next Saturday, the 23rd. We'd love everybody on the West Coast to head on down and take in that event. You get a little bit of a preview of it tomorrow night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Exponentially. Exponentially is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show as well. You could give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show, and join us for live chat during this show at the SOR Space Travelers Club. All you got to do is sign on in. And there you go. Great people in there. We'd love to have you. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, and you can subscribe and download our shows from iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read The Encounter online, or check out great video footage from Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV and UFO Seekers from Tim Doyle. Once again, everything at spacedoutradio.com. Joining us for the next hour is Grant Cameron. He is one of the top UFO researchers in the world, in my opinion. And, of course, he's Canadian, so we're flying the same flag. But his latest book, Charlie Red Star, has a very personal meaning to him, because this was an eyewitness account from him and many other people back in 1975 in Carman, Manitoba. You could get this book in any major bookstore. Grant, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate your having me on and your interest in what I did and what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're a mentor of mine. So anytime you want to come on, you just let me know and we'll make time for you. It's just that simple. Grant, I want you to take us through the history of Charlie Red Star. Let's go back to 1975. I can't remember it. I'm going to be honest. I was only 2 at the time.
Oh, wow.
So if you could take us back into 1975, Carman, Manitoba, am I wrong in assuming that Carman was a very religious town, much like my mother's from Steinbach, Manitoba? So those small communities were really held together by the church. Was that much the same?
Actually, no. Carmen was not. Well, there was religious people in there. There was, like, for example, the one woman who was a Pentecostal who, would tell me stories about she could turn the wind and stuff like this, and believed it was the angels of God that were behind this thing. And then I had the little 7-year-old tell the story, and the most dramatic interview I ever did was of this little 7-year-old kid who was with his sister alone in the house north of Carman, and he's very small, frail for his age, and he was urinating off the front porch because he didn't have an indoor bathroom, and this thing appeared. And I remember his mother believed this was the devil. And this kid had the nosebleeds. He was dreaming of these things. They pulled him out of school. He was out of school for almost a week, and then the symptoms started to fade, and they put him back in school. And so I went in to interview this kid, and he was hiding behind a chair on the other side of the room. He just wouldn't come out. And his father basically told me the whole story. Really riveting, scary situation with him. So you had these various people, but it wasn't like Steinbach is very sort of Mennonite. And I got a good guess for you. I'll have to talk to her whether she would come on your show, but I have an experiencer from Steinbach, and she tells this whole story about the religious implications for this whole thing. She was 2 miles south of Steinbach. This would be 1980, early 80s or mid 80s. And she's 5 years, no, how old is she? 5 years old. She's, this object appears, her parents are farming, and her mother, her father, and the neighbor this thing appears, and it's daylight sighting. It's a disc in very close, and she's looking up at this thing, and she said, Daddy, invite him in for fastba, invite him in for like cake or pie and coffee. And she was waving at this thing. Like it was that close. She was waving at this thing. And her father said, Connie, go back to the house. And she turned around, she went for the house. She said the next thing she remembered, she was sitting at the kitchen table, and it was evening. It was like, it was night already. It was like dark. And she told a story of how I said, well, did you ever discuss this with your parents? And she said, no, we never, ever discussed this, what had happened. And until her mother was dying. And then she asked her mother, do you remember what happened that day? And her mother said, I just remember what you remembered, that it was there. And then suddenly it was nighttime. And that's all the mother could remember. But this girl is actually being, she was, and I don't know if she's still being tracked, but she was, there's an experiencer inside NASA. She now lives in Florida. She lives outside of Orlando. And there's an experiencer that I know who actually had a download. He got an experiment that he put on the space shuttle that he got, he implied from a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. It was the last thing he remembered before he woke up that morning with this idea in his head. And he sold this company for lots of money, big time money. And so he's an experiencer, and he was following experiencers. I met him at an event in Pennsylvania. And that was when he was telling me about, he was following these various experiencers, which is, again, what I do is these are the people you got to talk to. Like, you know, the people who are actually interacting and getting messages and know what's actually going on. And so he said, well, I've got these two women. And then he said, the ones from Steinbach. And I said, are you kidding me? Steinbach? Are you kidding? I said, that's like 35 miles from where I live. And then he said, yeah. And then he gets his cell phone and he dials his cell phone. And suddenly he says, oh, Connie, I got somebody from Winnipeg. You want to talk to him? And so I got to know this girl. And she tells this whole story. I got to ask her, for example, like she grew up in Steinbach. So I said, did you ever discuss this with people in Steinbach? And she said, are you kidding? You know what Steinbach's like? She said, I mean, never, ever mentioned the story. So she's sort of like off the radar. She told me the story because I got to know her. And now she's sort of more open, and her kids appear to be experiencers, and they have all these different events, and she describes the type of beings that she saw and stuff. So Steinbach was a different kettle of fish than Carmen. Carmen was more, you know, like all sorts of multidimensionals or all sorts of religion types. I did have some experiencers though that were near Starbuck, which is closer to Winnipeg, and I remember that one. This is a story of two principals, and the one was the principal of a Hutterite colony. And so you can just imagine the school at a Hutterite colony. I mean, this is like Mennonite times 10. I mean, it was like, you know, like just an actual colony. And so she and this other woman were coming back from a meeting just south of Winnipeg, and they're driving through the country, and this thing appears over top of the car. And it's almost like the Close Encounters of the Third Kind thing where they're looking up at this thing. It's right above them, and the light is shining down on top of the car, and they're totally petrified. And the one woman is looking out. She actually rolls down the window, and she looks up, and she actually has eye damage. She has damage to her eyes. And they come, and they're going to Sanford, which is maybe about 15 miles out of Winnipeg. And they tell the story how they're driving along, and they're petrified. They don't know what to do, so they pull off into a farmer's yard and turn off the lights, and this thing suddenly goes instantaneously, moves 8 miles away to a microwave tower at Brunkild, which is about 8 miles away, and it's sitting by this microwave tower, and they go, oh, it's all over, and they pull back on the road, turn their lights on, and they said, boom, this thing was back on top of the car again, and you know, not that high up, and with this light coming down. And they described this story of how they went across Highway 3, which is like a major highway. They're crossing this highway to go into town, And according to the story they told, they did not even look. They just drove across, and they could have been killed going across this highway because they didn't look either way. They were so petrified. And as soon as they crossed the highway going into the town of Sanford, this thing sort of backed away and flew away. And I remember we were in there, and because of this, both of them were in this position where they were both principals. And if this story got out that they had, seen this, I mean, this could have been the end of their jobs or whatever. But I remember the National Enquirer guy, we went to the woman's place, and I can't remember, we were talking to the How to Write principal, or I think it was the other one. And so Bob Pratt was doing the investigation, and he said to her, I heard you saw something. And she said, I'm not going to talk about it. And then he said, well, we have this thing, and he kept talking or whatever. And she had the front door, it's like a salesman thing. She's got the front door, and I'm not going to talk about it. I can't talk about it, whatever. And it went on for about, at least 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, she's got the door open, and she's telling us the story. And she tells us this whole story. And I said to him, when I left, I remember I went to Bob and I said, man, that was amazing. I can't believe it. How did you ever get her to talk? And he said, here's the number one rule of reporting. Just keep talking. Eventually, they all talk. I was just so floored that he actually got this woman to tell this story, and because they were principals. So there was this religious thing, but a lot of it had to the small town thing. That was more the thing. Was what happened in Carmen was, I would say half the people in the town probably saw it, but what happened, there was a French family who was just north of the town, who had some really bizarre stuff going on. They were raising PMU horses, which they use for birth control. So these horses would all be hitched up inside the barn. And so they had the one incident where the thing landed in the yard, and they could see sort of people around it at the bottom, like shadows, like people walking around. They really didn't see the beings or anything, but they saw these shadows as if there was somebody walking around this craft. And when the thing was landing, they thought the horses were going to tear this barn down. They just went absolutely crazy. And then it was just sudden, they said silence, just boom. The horses were quiet. There was no noise. And it was then this thing was, they could see these beings moving around. And they had 32 of their PMU horses they had them in a field about 20 miles north of their main farm. And these horses disappeared. And of course, they attributed it to these UFOs because they had these around the house all the time. They were flying. These triangles would come, and they would flip. The triangle would flip just as it was going over the house. And I interviewed the young kids. There was kids that were about 6 and 8 years old, and the other kid was 1. And I interviewed these kids one time when the parents weren't there, and they were telling the same story. So this family had this bizarre story about the 32 horses disappearing, and they claimed that there was $700 a month in hydro being taken off their line, that they believed this UFO was stealing power off their line, and they're having to pay for this. So they started telling these stories, and they said that they would go, and this is the small town thing rather than the religious thing. Small town, everybody knows everybody, and they would go in, and it was like, here they are. And the woman said she'd go into the post office, and people would see her, and they would actually turn around and walk out the other door. Nobody would talk to them. They were just ostracized. And so when I was doing all these interviews, every interview would be the same way. I'd go to the person, I'd say, I heard you saw something. And they'd go, who said I saw something? And I'd say, oh, so-and-so said you saw something. And then they go, well, it really was nothing. It was just a light in the sky. And then I'd say, oh, really? Can you tell me about it? And then they would slowly open up. And after about, 15 minutes, it was a saucer sitting in the middle of the road, and they couldn't drive around it. It's like, it turned out to be some really bizarre story, And then everyone would end the same way. They'd say, I wasn't the only one who saw it, And then they would give you about 5 names. Like, oh yeah, where does he live? And I'd copy all these names down. And at one point, I had hundreds of people on the list that I hadn't even interviewed. Most of the people I never interviewed in this book. There was just so many people. And so that was the way it worked. It was like nobody wanted to be this family north of Carmen. And I remember when the horses disappeared, I went back years later when I was doing a lecture on it in the United States, and I wanted to take pictures of this farm, like this famous barn where this thing had taken place, and the house and the road where they would follow it down the road and all this sort of stuff, just really bizarre stuff. And so I went there, and all of a sudden this truck is coming across the back 40 of this property. And the guy comes up and he says, what are you doing? What are you doing? What do you got the camera? And he's all upset, whatever. And I said, well, I'm a researcher, and the family used to live here, saw these UFOs, and I was involved with them, and I'm doing a lecture and whatever. And he said, well, we still live here. And he said, I'm the kid. He's the kid who was 1 year old at the time when this happened. He was in a crib when this was happening. And he said, he was telling me about how ostracized the whole family was. And he said he was 1 year old when this happened. And he said his entire school career, the kids still bugged him all the way through school about, you and your family with these stupid UFOs and stuff. And he wasn't even involved. He was like 1 year old. And the one kid told me that when the horses disappeared, they were bullied in school. And they actually, the one kid said to them, or they would say, they had this joke. Where did your horses go? What happened to your horses? Did they go to the Big Dipper for a drink? And these kids, they're just horrible. And that's what you find in these sort of small towns or religious environments. Like I don't know if I ever talked to you about Chris Bledsoe. He's a very famous experiencer who's now about to have a big Hollywood thing that they're going to do his story. And he talked about, he was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which has the real religious angle to the thing. It's all Southern Baptists and Pentecostals. And he said that when he had his experience, he had a business where he was doing $20 million a year in building houses. He was a big contractor. And he had about 400 people working for him. And he said when he had his experience, when he made it public, none of those 400 people would ever talk to him again. And he said his wife's family, a lot of his wife's family still will not talk to him. And this is like 10 years later. And his story is very famous. Everybody knows that he was telling the truth. And he's had all these other experiences since, whatever. And his son was 17 years old when this happened. So he was in grade 12. He was so badly ostracized in the school that he ran away from home. And he ran away from home 3 times, and they'd bring him back 3 times. They got him off the street in California begging. And this kid just really didn't want anything to do it because he never did finish school because he was so badly harassed in school that he didn't finish school. And he also told me that every time he came back to Fayetteville, he believed that they would come to his room. And that he didn't want to talk about it. When I tried to interview him, he said, every time I talk about it, they come back and they come into my room. And so this is something I think people have to realize is that some people maybe have a good reason for not talking, or if you do talk to them, that you try to use their name privately because they are carrying very important information. But if you're in a small town or a very religious town, it can be a real trial because everybody's seeing it. And that's what I found in Carmen around this family. As I went through and I went through witness after witness after witness, suddenly they'd say, oh, this guy saw it. And I'd say, well, where does he live? And he says, he lives right beside this other guy. And I go, he lives beside him? And it was like, I found out that all the neighbors around this guy, they're all seeing it as well. But nobody would talk. They didn't want to end up where this key family had ended up, and all the neighbors were seeing it as well, but they all kept quiet.
And on a different extent, I know the understanding of, the religious not taking these subjects very seriously or getting very scared from them. A good friend of mine was telling me a story today. His wife is a housekeeper. Mm-hmm. Went in to do the job either yesterday or today or maybe a couple of days ago, and the person whose house she was cleaning says, oh, well, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went on a ghost hunt out at the ranch, and I run. And me personally, Grant, I run the ghost hunt.
Yeah.
The lady said, yeah, you can't work here anymore.
Yeah.
And literally threw my friend's wife out of the house and said, we don't believe in that. You may have demons. You may have been possessed. And all of this kind of rhetoric, I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
To be polite. And now my friend's wife, she's a contractor. She goes house to house to clean homes for people. And now she's lost one of her major clients, all because she decided to go on a ghost hunt and the religious part of that person didn't allow it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing how that happens.
Yeah. It is like, I know my sister, I was always called the weird brother, and now I say, well, I feel good now because I got a weird sister. And she went to some major medium, and my family's sort of very religious. My mother and my sisters and whatever, and they do the church thing all the time, and very conservative. Missouri Synod Lutheran, if you know what that is pretty conservative. And so my little sister sort of started getting into, the Long Island medium. And so she went to this medium. It was like $300 an hour, but apparently this woman travels Western Canada and she's booked for 6 months and all this kind of stuff. So my sister went to her, and suddenly my mother's mother appears at this thing, and basically my sister says, like, this woman is dead on everything. She's just like unbelievable. You know, how she died, all the things that were bothering her. And my sister was only 10 years old when she died, so she didn't know all this kind of stuff. And then the uncle appears, and then the mother says, there's a school teacher who's not well, and my one uncle, my mother had 16 brothers and sisters, so one is still alive. There's only one, and he's not that well. And so my sister said, well, there's a school teacher, and she didn't figure it out. And she said, the medium said, she's holding an apple. And then she suddenly knew who it was, and it was this uncle who's not very well. And so we're actually doing a hockey thing. We're doing a draft. Like, we've got, my family has all the grandkids have they get to pick. My mother buys a half a season ticket for the Winnipeg Jets. So then they have this big draft. So everybody shows up at the draft, and they draft which games everybody's going to get to go to. And so one of the cousins is there, who's the daughter of the guy who's sick. So my sister starts telling this story about going to this medium, and they talked about your father, and his mother said, I just want to give him a message. It's going to be okay. He's strong. It's going to be okay. And then she said to the daughter, she says, well, how do you think that? What do you think Lloyd would think? And she said, that's not going to go over very well. And so it's that attitude. But what I look at different in terms of religion. I look at it as the main problem to me in the world is the whole concept of separation versus oneness. The main message that the aliens are trying to put out is this oneness message. And that is, if you take the prime mystical experiences, whether it's the meditation, samadhi experience, or whether it's the ayahuasca experience, it always ends up the same way. It's like you suddenly, ego is gone, you realize everything's connected and everything's one. And so I say that's the main message, and that's the problem that I have in the UFO community, is you don't have the religious thing in the UFO community, but you still have that separation and idea, is that there's always the evil thing. It's like the United States. It's like there's the good guys and the bad guys, and that's what I see as the main problem in the world, is the belief in separation, that I'm a good guy and you're a bad guy. And it's almost like hockey teams. Like the Jets are the good guys and the Oilers are the bad guys, or Vancouver Canucks are the bad guys. And we sort of believe the refs are pulling for the other guy. And so we have, when you have evil people, then you have this situation where we can go kill them, we can steal their stuff, we can do all this kind of stuff. And so in the UFO community, I really got frustrated. I was on this trip just recently, and I really got frustrated with people, and I said, I'm out of here. I can't take this anymore. And it's this sort of this negative vibration that I described before, because in the UFO community, all you're doing is changing the noun. So instead of evil demons, like the religion would bring up, it's evil government, and it's this conspiracy stuff, that there's these evil government people, or there's there's this Illuminati people that are trying to kill us all, and they're trying to throw us off, whatever. And I'm going, like, even if this was true, what has this got to do with anything? Because in reality, it's, what are you doing with your life? When you die, you can't go and say, well, I didn't do anything with my life, but, if 9/11 hadn't happened, or if there'd been UFO disclosure, I would have done something. But, and my mother-in-law was bugging me, and the dog ate my homework, and all this stuff that's totally irrelevant. And it's this sort of this negative vibration. And that's where I think I mentioned earlier in the show, is when you get this separation vibration, and whatever the noun is, whether you say it's Jews or, Mexicans, or whatever your noun is, that all this group is evil, all this group is bad, and we're the good guys, and we got to get rid of the bad guys, then it gets this sort of thing where if you run with that negative vibration in your head all the time, it can't be good. To me, it's not. And I just, in the UFO community, there's so much of this negative vibration in terms of, especially with the conspiracy stuff. And I tell people, like, I chased the president of the United States. I mean, I talked to Dick Cheney. I confronted Dick Cheney. I go after the top scientists of CIA and all sorts of high-level guys, John Alexander and stuff, and people who a lot of people are really scared of, that he's going to kill him. And I said, in 42 years, I have never been threatened by anybody, and and I'm the guy that should be, threatened, because I'm after these high-level people. And I've never had a whistleblower come to me and say they're going to tell me all the national security secrets. And so I just say, based on myself and the people I've met, because I have these high-level people that I'm in contact with. I was telling you about this Connie from Steinbach. And the guy who's dealing with her is almost as high level as you can get inside NASA. And he's not that public, so I don't out the guy. But he's an ordinary guy. He's just an ordinary guy like everybody else. And this guy, there's two guys I deal with in the CIA. Both are presidential briefers that I know of these guys, and I know their background. And they're just ordinary people. They have all sorts of crazy quirks and stuff like that. And so I see it the same thing. It's like everybody thinks they're saving the world. I think they're saving the world. The Arabs think they're saving the world. The Russians think they're saving the world. And everybody always thinks the other guy is the bad guy. So that's where I see the problem is this sort of separation where we, instead of doing the oneness thing that the aliens are preaching, we do the separation thing. So we get into the capitalism. That was one of the YouTube videos that I haven't made yet that I'm going to do. Are aliens commies? And yeah, probably that's exactly what they are. And that is one of the reasons why I say that the government is going to have a very hard time making this thing public, is because the way we work in modern society is this separation thing where it's me versus you, it's good versus bad, it's capitalism, which means you take out as much as you can from the system. Rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Whoever's got the most toys when they die wins. And it's that idea. You take out as much as you can, and you put back into the system as little as you can. So you get a lawyer. If you've got a lot of money, you get a lawyer. You build yourself a corporation, and you get a tax accountant, and you pay as little tax as you possibly can. Whereas, in fact, when you look at the alien situation, it's exactly, you can't even get more opposite. It's like black and white. It's exactly the opposite. It's like this commune, like a Mennonite colony, or like a kibbutz from Israel or something. You put in what you can contribute, and you take out only what you need. And that's what you see. It's like this hive mentality type thing where everybody's doing a job, where and that's not going to go over well in the United States of America. I mean, if the real sort of right-wing people figure that we've got competition and evil Chinese people trying to steal our jobs, you can imagine what's going to happen when they suddenly realize that these beings, whoever they are, have no interest in anything material. They don't have any jewelry. Like people say, they're here to steal our gold. And I say, well, how many reports have you ever seen of an alien with jewelry? They don't have any jewelry. They don't have any designer clothes. They don't have any leather furniture on the craft. It's basically only what they need. It's almost like this sort of hive mentality, which is a lot of people aren't going to go for it. It's where everybody's equal. Everybody does their job. And that's something that's completely contrary to Western ideals. So that to me is the main problem in terms of what are the problems in the world. I say if you get rid of the belief in separation, all evil would go away. There you could not possibly be evil. And there's one witness, I don't know if you've ever had her on your show. Her name is Sherry Wild. She has one of the most important stories I've ever heard in the UFO community. And she she was a real estate agent in Wisconsin, lifelong experiences, very high recall, has written a book called The Forgotten Promise. And in her incidents, she was told, and a number of these experiences say the same thing, 54% of all experiencers are talked to about oneness, about the concept of oneness. And she was told from the time she said she was like 5 years old, Da, who was the main alien that she was dealing with, said, "Okay, Sherry, what are the 3 main lessons in life that you need to know?" And she would say, the number one is oneness. Oneness is the number one message. And the second most important thing was we are multidimensional beings on many levels. And the third most important thing is control your thoughts, which is this idea of negativity, that if you've got to control your thoughts, you can't be running garbage through your head all the time. And so these were the 3 main messages. And she was shown this lesson on the oneness thing. And I always tell people the story, and she describes it, where they take her to her father, and her father's sitting at a kitchen table. And they're sitting in behind. She says, "Well, why you got me here? Why are you showing me my father?" And he's sitting at this checkerboard tablecloth, and he's got fork and knife and stuff. And they're sitting in behind him. He said, "Just watch, Sherry, just watch." And he takes the fork his right hand, and he drives it into his left hand, and there's blood shooting up all over the place. And she said, "That's horrible. Why would you show me something like that?" And they said, "Sherry, this is the lesson of oneness. What you do to someone else, you might as well do to yourself." And so to me, I really believe that. And I've talked to a lot of experiencers, and I absolutely maintain that is the number one lesson in the world, is the idea of oneness. And if oneness is actually believed by people, there would be no war, there would be no stealing, there would be nothing. And that's how they get here. They understand the absolute idea of oneness. That's how they get here. Everything is was described by many people at Lockheed Skunk Works, by Eric Walker, by the Canadian government. The same idea is that everything in space is time and is connected. There really is no time and space. Everything is one. Everything's connected, and that's how they move from here to there. That's what the whole portal idea, why that's so important. This idea of the portal thing is that you go into the other world. This idea where you go through the portal and you're in another world, and that's how they move from one place to another. They're coming through these stargates or these portals. They're not flying through space. They understand everything is connected, everything is one, and that's how they move through. So to me, this is the ultimate road I want to go down and work on this whole thing of what is the main message and how does this all fit together, because a lot of people have ideas, of peace in the world. And I went to this meditation thing at Mount Shasta, which is related to this book, which I can tell this bizarre story about this message from an alien. But we went there, and even the oneness disappears there. So what the whole thing was is we're going to go to Mount Shasta and we're going to do this meditation for world peace. And there's this guy by the name of Ricardo Gonzalez. He's a Peruvian. He's a contactee. He's had about a dozen direct encounters with this alien by the name of Antaral. And he's coming there, and they're going to do this meditation for world peace. So we get there, and then suddenly there's this other group across the road, and there's another contactee. And he's on the other, just literally on the other side of the road. It's like two teams. It's like the BC Lions on one side and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the other side training, and these two, and the people start bad-mouthing this other guy, and it's like, oh, he's just here to muscle in on Ricardo's thing, because Ricardo always has these aliens appear, or these sightings on Saturday night, and he's an egotistical guy. And I'm going, like, even the separations thing is going on here. It's like, this is supposed to be the people who are going to meditate for world peace, and we're into like the hockey game thing. It's like the good guys versus the bad guys, and we have the good meditators on one side of the road, and you have the bad meditators on the other side of the road. And I'm going, like, this is the problem in the world. Is this belief that that everybody else is wrong and we're right, and that we can take people out, we can steal their stuff because they're evil, and if they're evil, we have the right to kill them and do whatever we want to them. And so that was my experience there. Was even when you get to these people who are at a very sort of high vibrating level where we're going to meditate for world peace, and to me it was like you can sit there and meditate till the cows come home. And unless you actually have the oneness experience inside your meditation, where you realize that those people on the other side of the road are you and you are them, you're not going to solve anything by meditating. This is a total waste of time. The oneness concept is key, but it did tie very strangely into the book, and it shows you this synchronicity where I keep trying to get out of the UFO community. I keep getting dragged back in, and now I've been dragged into the next book. And what happened was, very bizarre story. When I wrote the book, as I told you, in 1977, I had all these sightings and all these experiences. Nobody would publish the book. I gave it to my sister. She held it for like 30 years, gave it back to me. I digitalized it because you had digital technology. So I digitalized it. And then I would just let people read the manuscript. And I had no intention of publishing the manuscript. And then there was a woman, she's a producer out of Toronto. She's a TV producer who's sort of into weird stuff. And I got her into the UFO thing and was talking to her. And she said, "Oh, you got this manuscript from Carmen. Can I read it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, you can read it." So I gave her the manuscript. She said, "This is exactly what I'm looking for. This is exactly." And she said, "I've got this movie. I want to do this movie in Canada on the Rama Group." And the Rama Group is, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, Project Rama out of Peru. And they start exactly the same time as me. 1974, these two brothers in Peru have this encounter where they see this UFO. and it's a close-up encounter. Then they go out the next night, they see it again, and they see it again, and then it lands, and the door opens up, and this alien comes out, and they interact with this alien. And the alien is from the planet Apu. Okay, so this is the background of this thing. So this thing builds in 1975. When I have my sightings, they start this Project Rama, and they start bringing in their friends, and their friends see this stuff, and their friends interact with the alien. They bring their parents there, and their parents see this thing, and then they bring in this reporter is there from Spain, and the one brother takes him out, and he sees it up close. And so this becomes this famous story of this Rama group that has these groups, almost like the CE5, like the Stephen Greer thing, where they're training people how to do the meditation, how to vibrate, and how to bring these beings in and stuff like this. And they become famous. They're all over the world. So anyway, she wants to do this Rama story, and nobody in Canada will finance the movie. And it's a movie, not a documentary. It's a big time movie with the big actors and big money put at it and stuff like that. And so the reason she had my manuscript was that she had to finance this thing in Canada. So what they were going to do is they were going to have they're going to take my story and start the movie with my story. This small town in Carmen, and this reporter goes out and he sees all this stuff, and he talks to all these people, and suddenly he discovers the Rama story in Peru, and he goes down and he studies these people that are having these direct contacts with an alien. So she says, I want to option your book for a movie. And I said, okay, fine. So she puts an option on it, and she's going to do this movie. She starts the movie, and this is like the same in the UFO community. Like the Rama group, the two brothers break up. They're fighting with each other. It's a real ugly, it turns into a sort of a real ugly story, even though they have all these people trained and stuff. Don't have the separation thing. They're fighting, and who discovered it, and who was the main Rama guy, and all this sort of stuff. So she gets this movie thing, and for a couple of years she pays the option on the movie, and then she just gets disgusted. She gets very, very sick, and she thinks it's got to do with this story. That's just such an ugly story that she doesn't want anything, puts it on the shelf, and sort of gives up on it. So anyway, she wants the book published, and it was because she wanted the book published that it got published. I had no intention of publishing the book. So she actually went to Dundurn in Toronto, and she negotiated that my book would be published the same time this movie came out. Then when I saw the contract, the contract said that they got every single book I did from now on. I would have to offer them my next book at this crazy rate that they pay. And I said, absolutely not. There's no way you're getting my next born child, and there's no way. I'm not signing the contract. And so I let the contract lapse. This TV producer comes back to me a couple years later and said, well, what happened with the book? Did you ever do the book? And I said, no, I wasn't going to sign that stupid contract. And she says, well, negotiate. Just tell them you're not going to take this. Take it out of the contract. And I said, well, that's not me. I'm not a negotiator. I don't want to fight with people, whatever. So she goes back a second time, and she negotiates for me, and she gets all this stuff taken out of the contract. And that's why the book has been published. It had nothing to do with me. She got the book published. And I figured the second time, I better not pull it the second time, because I already embarrassed this producer the first time. So anyway, the book comes out. The movie doesn't come out. So then what happens is I get invited to this thing at Mount Shasta, this World Meditation Peace thing. I have no interest in going, but a girl that helps me do a lot of editing, anything I ask her to do, and she's in LA, anything I ask her to do, she helps me out. She does it, whatever. And she's big into this. She's from South America. All these people are from South America that come up to Shasta. It all happens in Mexico. It happens in Spanish. I don't know what's going on, whatever. And I say, well, okay, Katerina, you are interested. I'll come up. I'll support you. I'll come to this thing. So I'm going to California. I get on the road. I'm going to California, and this is the next book. So they have all these events. 2012, 2013, Michael Sala has an event there. 2014, Paula Harris sees the alien in the bush. 2015, Paula Harris sees the alien in the bush again with 9 other witnesses. And 2016, the alien's in a crystal shop, and this bizarre story. And so I realize this is going on, but I'm still not that interested in going. So I'm on my way down there. I got a girl from Winnipeg with me. We're traveling across the Nevada desert, and her cell phone rings. And it's Katerina from Los Angeles. And Katerina works in a law office, so Katerina reads it like a law thing. She says, at 12:13 today, I got a message from Paula Harris for Grant Cameron. And the message is from Antarel, the alien. Antarel to Ricardo to Paula Harris. And Paula Harris does tell Grant Cameron, Antarel knows he's coming to the mountain. And on Saturday night, there will be a planned event. They call it this planned event thing. And when Paula Harris went into the bush twice, she was told a couple days before she went, there would be a planned event, and they knew she was coming. So I'm thinking, holy cow, I'm going to go to this event, and I'm going to get to see this alien in the bush. And I go there, and this is the bizarre thing, was the whole book started with this Rama thing, with this Rama group, and Aunt Terrell is from the planet Apu, the same planet as the Rama people. It's not related to Rama. And the guy across the road that everybody says, oh, he's this guy, he's egotistical, and he shouldn't be here, he's cutting in on our thing, is a Rama guy. He was trained by Rama in the 1980s. So here we go full circle. We have this Rama movie that's going to get made. I have no interest in the Rama story. And suddenly I'm in the middle of the Rama story. I've got this alien giving me this message. And then we go to Shasta, and there's two messages come across at 9:33. This event's going to happen. And I'm sitting there in this circle of 130 Spanish-speaking people. And all of a sudden there's these flashes. And I look up, and it was like, I was thinking like, this is going to sound real egotistical, because I'm going like, this is right over my head. And it was way up high. It seemed to be way up high. And yet I'm thinking to myself, it can't be, it's got to be above the group, but it looks like it's above me. And everybody else that reported said, yeah, it looked like it was above me. And now I'm into this thing about satellites. So I'm going to tune people in on satellites, because it was an hour and a half after sunset, and it was directly at 12 o'clock. So there's no way it's a satellite. It was in the shadow of the Earth already. It was well inside. If you're going to see anything reflecting off of satellites, it's going to be in the western horizon, and it's going to be a lot earlier than that. So this event happened, and these Rama people. So I go to the Rama people after, when I suddenly realized, I have to do this book. I've got to detail all these bizarre stories that happened at this mountain. And so I go to the Rama guy, and everybody doesn't want me to go, but I go, I'm going to talk to this guy. I'm not afraid to, talk to this guy. And they were worse. I mean, like, we were totally out to lunch compared to what was going on the other side of the road. They had all these sightings, and they had, lights in the bush, and it was like, holy cow, just the most bizarre. And that's the weird thing that I told these people, I'm out of the UFO community. I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't stand this negative vibration. And it was almost like, oh no, you got one more rabbit hole, and they grab you and pull you down another rabbit hole, and you got to do this next book. And so I say, okay, I'll do that book, and then I'm getting out. I want to go back to consciousness. I want to do, I have a couple of books that are not really UFO related. They're more into consciousness and what reality is and how the world works and stuff like that. But very, very, I live a very, very bizarre life. I've got the CIA guy I'm chasing around, and the portal thing. And then I've got this the thing with the Rama thing. And it's like, I haven't got enough time to actually handle all the stuff that happens. I just live this bizarre life that I say. I do the Wayne Dyer thing. I do the 3 thank yous every day. Like, who could live a life that's been as exciting as the stuff that happens to me? It's just like, it's like living in a science fiction movie. It's just bizarre.
When you decided to bring out Charlie Red Star as a book, I realize you know every fine detail of what happened during that time, but was there a lot of kickback saying, just let it be, just let our community just move on? This is something we want to forget about?
No, the community had no idea. I don't think they knew until last Wednesday. They wrote the town, the guy, like all the media in that part of the southern Manitoba was involved, including Steinbach wrote articles. But until last Wednesday, I had a publicist working on this thing, and I didn't have an interview with that newspaper that covered the story, and where the editor of the paper was big time. He was out there every night trying to see this UFO thing. And now I guess he's long dead and gone. But the reporter, when the reporter phoned me from Winkler, which is in the same area, and so I said, this is the interview I've been waiting for. This is the town. And the guy could have cared less. I mean, they wrote a full-page article. It was a major article. But the guy, he was just like, you could see he was reading the questions. He had no interest in this at all. And when the people came to the book signing, there was the daughter of the guy who owned the airport, and she was there. And the woman who took all the famous photographs, her daughter was there. But they basically, until last Wednesday, they didn't even know that they knew something had happened in 75, but the vast majority of people in Carmen, I would say still probably 90% of people in the town have no idea what happened. They unless they read the book, it's a story that's completely forgotten. It's like I said, this woman was there, at the book signing who was there for 9 years, and she said, there's a museum in Carmen, and this is not in that museum. There's no mention of this story in the thing, and it's almost like a story that is completely off the map. Nobody knows it happened, and a lot of them really don't care because it wasn't them. It's just the guy that owned the airport didn't even come to the book signing, and he was the main guy. He had 150 sightings during that period of time. His daughter came, but so it may pick up where people will say, leave it alone, but it's almost like nobody cared. I mean, they'll know that Eddie Belford was there and stuff like that, but as to the fact that their town was absolutely infested with these UFOs in 75, vast majority of the people in the town really don't know, and I don't think really care unless they were to read the book and realize how big a story it was. So maybe it will catch on, but right now, nobody knows, nobody cares.
Do you think that this was kind of like a refreshing moment for you because you have been focused so heavily, Grant, on presidents, UFOs, and getting to the Disclosure Project and bringing these vast topics, especially when it comes to government and vibe? Was this a chance for you to kind of step back and finally write your story?
Well, it was already written. It was just it was more of a pressure situation because it was going through a publisher. And they have a lot of, you got to hit deadlines, and every 2 minutes they want you to promote this or do that or whatever. So it was a lot of pressure in terms of doing it the way they wanted to do it. It was refreshing in that it was how it all started for me. And when I look back, because I added the nuclear weapon thing to it. In the 70s, if I'd written the book in the 70s, the nuclear weapon thing would not have been in there. I didn't realize that until maybe 5 years ago, that there was this real direct nuclear weapon connection to what had happened there. So in that way, it was refreshing. And the other thing that changed was in the 70s, I believe this was all random. And this has come from my work on consciousness and talking to experiencers that one of the books I want to do is part of it is one of the chapters is this idea, is the world random or is it patterned? And we were taught that it's just a random world. It's all meaningless. It's all, just accident and, chance and all this kind of stuff. And what I realized, looking back on this story, that none of this was chance. Absolutely the bizarre synchronicities that I didn't realize until just as we were putting the book out. The one was, for example, the CTV affiliate here in Winnipeg actually got this thing jumping off the ground. And this was in 1975 in May. And that's what got me to go out there after I saw that they had made this film. It was in the newspapers and stuff. But when I saw the film, I said, come on, let's go see it. And I had no interest in UFOs. I just wanted to go see what everybody was looking at. And we went out there and I figured I'd never see anything. And the thing flew right in front of the car. So it sort of changed my life. And what happened was when I reviewed it, even I wrote the story up in the 70s about how they captured this thing on film and the crew and all the people that were involved in the crew and how it happened and how they had this thing on the ground and stuff. And so when I looked at it years later, I remembered the story of the guy. He's 8.25 miles away from the objects on the ground, and he's standing here with this camera on this road. And this thing it gets more intense, and light goes down, intense goes down. And he says, the next time this thing glows up, I'm going to shoot. And it was almost like the UFO that now I look at it, it's not random anymore. Now this is pattern. And the UFO was saying, are you ready to shoot? Because as he pushes the trigger, this thing jumps in the air 5,000 feet in 3 frames of film. And it just, this went viral, this really highly credible film taken by this TV crew. And so the fact is, was that random? That he just happened to push the trigger as this thing jumped in the air? No, I don't think it was random, because it got me to go out. And I started to think, like, they needed me out there, because I knew about this for 3 months before that film was taken. And I said to my friend, let's go out and see what they're looking at, because it was in the paper. And we didn't go, and we never would have gone because we'd completely forgotten about it. We were back to, playing football and playing cards and, doing all the sports stuff. No interest in this subject. And it was almost like they forced this film getting caught on the ground to get me to go out there. And then when the manuscript got rejected, there was a second bizarre synchronicity that happened. Was my father was a pilot for the Canadian government. He had his own sighting, and I put it in the book. And so he said this guy by the name of Ernie App had a sighting, and he was in the office. and he wants to talk to you. So I said, okay. So I go and I talk to this Ernie Epp guy, and it's just an ordinary sighting. It's nothing unusual, just a light in the sky type thing. And then he says, and here, I get this book is rejected. And he says, if you really want to know what's going on with UFOs, you should study what the Canadian government was doing in the 1950s. I used to work for the guy, and I went, you did? And this is Wilbur Smith's story, the Project Magnet story from the 1950s. And there was only like 6 people that worked for him in the whole time. And it was all, very highly confidential because it was off the record that these people were working for. There were 6 people. And I happened to have one guy of those 6 people was in my father's office and happened to see a UFO and happened to come tell me this is where you should go. And that's what got me on the path of going after the Canadian government, then going to the president of Penn State University, then going to the president. It was almost like they were laying these patterns down, and almost like the same thing happens with this latest book. I say, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. And it's like, no, one more rabbit hole. You're coming down another rabbit hole. And they drag me down this next rabbit hole where I know I've got to do this book because I got all these tapes. I had these people that were all there. All these witnesses were there. I'm walking around with this movie camera and I'm filming these people and I'm going, you saw this 9-foot or 10 or whatever it was, 9-foot alien in the bush? Yeah, I saw him. And they're going, and I said, you changed your life? Oh, yeah, changed. And all these people, witnesses, I couldn't believe it. And I'm going, holy cow, this is like a story that people need to know. And so it was like they dragged me down one more rabbit hole. And I'm pretty sure once that thing gets finished, they'll drag me down another rabbit hole. Every time I try to get out, it's almost like you start looking at life as if it's completely different. It's not very random. It's almost like it's patterned, like the reincarnation thing. I would say UFOs change. If you involve reincarnation, everything changes because then it's all soul contract. I'm coming here to do things. And that's my final message to people as I say, it doesn't matter where the disclosure happens. It doesn't matter if all the conspiracy stuff is true or not true. The only thing that you have to worry about is that you are born. You had a soul contract to come in here. For reincarnation is true. You came in here to do something. You will die and you will be asked one question, how did it work out? Because you planned the whole thing. You set it up. You set up the players. And all you have to do is worry about, why did I come into this world? What am I supposed to be doing? And am I doing it? Forget about what everybody else is doing. Forget about whether there's a big conspiracy or the government's covering up, whatever. What did I come here to do? And that's the only question people need to answer.
Grant, we have about 35 seconds left with you. Where can everybody find your books? I'm getting asked these questions in the chat rooms.
Well, in Canada, you can get it in any bookstore. And I think it's in the United States, too, because I had a publicist there. So it'll be in bookstores, but Amazon.com. Or on my website, presidentialufo.com, you can go through there. But Amazon is the main place where you can get it. In Canada, in bookstores, for sure, it's in all the bookstores.
My friend, thank you so much for coming back on Spaced Out Radio. We will do it again one more time here in the next few months, I'm hoping. But thank you so much, Grant. And once again, Charlie Red Star is the name of Grant's latest book. I highly suggest you pick it up. Grant's an incredible writer, incredibly intelligent, and very well received by the people who are giving him information as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Coming up in hour number 3, Joe Roop from Lighting the Void and KTLK The Fringe FM is going to be joining me for hour number 3. We're going to talk more UFOs. We're going to talk Sasquatch and see what else comes down the pipe. As we got 1 hour to go on the mighty SOR, I hope you stick around and join us. I'll be here. Hopefully you will as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back with more SOR right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, dogman, ghost, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we're prepping for the Forest Moon Paracon, which is Saturday, September 23rd. I am one of the speakers at that event. Eric Cooper, Christina George, Eric Markham, R. Keith Andrews, and Mike Morin will all be here to break down the event. And if you're on the West Coast, we'd love to have you come down to Concrete, Washington, and hang out with us at the Forest Moon Paracon, September 23rd. I'm very excited about making my way down there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's keep it up, and let's see if you can get down there. We get going tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Exponentially is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show as well. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join the SOR Space Travelers Club to chat during this show as well, as we always got a live chat going each and every night. You can also follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You could shop at the Spaced Out Radio store, rock out to some Bumblefoot, read The Encounter online, watch great videos from UFO seekers or Contact TV, and of course you could join the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Tonight, in the final hour, as Grant Cameron was on for the first two, we got Joseph Roop from KTLK, the Fringe FM's Lighting the Void. Joe, welcome.
Hello, what's going on, everybody?
Not too much. How's your hair tonight?
It's messy. I need to get a haircut, man.
Not me, man. I'm growing it. I'm
thinking about shaving it bald. What's it feel like, Dave, to be a paranormal gangster? You just had...
You gotta wait. Dude, you gotta wait for my speech. I'm not talking about it. You got to wait for my speech. So when I'm at the Forest Moon Paracon in a week and 2 days from now, I'm already panicking because I'm only halfway through my speech right now. Only halfway through, and I got 90 minutes to cover. So this weekend and all next week before I leave, I'm going to be writing like a mofo trying to get it all complete. My topic, as I'll talk tomorrow night on the show, is I hate the paranormal. But I don't really. So it's a little bit of a contradiction. So you'll have to check it out. But I am going to put it on Facebook Live. So I can't give up anything about being the paranormal gangsta. That's for sure. Can't do it. You're not going to suck me into that tonight.
No, man, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like you just had Stanton Friedman on.
Oh, yes.
And then you had Grant Cameron on.
Yeah.
Those are like OGs. So if you're talking to two OGs, then that makes you a gangster.
I don't understand your Americanism. I don't understand it. English, man. English.
Sorry.
You know?
Great show, by the way, man.
Thank you.
I really love listening
Thank
to that
you.
guy talk. Great questions.
You know, he is, I'll be honest with you, I met Grant in 2015 when he was part of a tour coming to Vancouver along with Paul Hellier, Richard Dolan, Victor Vigiani. It was a great, great time. And it was getting to know him on a little bit of a personal level. You know, not much. I mean, we did talk privately for about an hour, and, you know, he is just a real guy. He just wants to get the information out there, much like any good journalist should, but he's a researcher, not a journalist. You know, he's a writer. But he is so connected. And it's funny because sometimes I wish the audience could hear the conversation I have with our listeners, or pardon me, our guests, hours before the show, because we were actually talking, and I asked him point blank. I said, Grant, how long did it take you to finally get into that A-list of guests? And he was saying how he just got lucky. He just got lucky. He met one person, and that's where it all took off for him. And, you know, for all of us who are trying to make it in this field, to be that next radio show or that next researcher, all it takes is one, man. And that's what it's all about, is you keep working hard, you keep bringing original content, you keep, you know, plugging away, because one day that one set of ears or that one set of eyes or that one voice could come out of the woodwork and give you the break that you need. So it was very, very cool. And sometimes I wish the audience could hear those conversations, but they're just setting up the show. That's all they are, right? So it's kind of cool.
No doubt.
It's kind of cool. I did something
Well,
cool.
and
Go ahead.
Yeah, and he follows through too, man. I mean, this guy walked up to Dick Cheney and was like, "Hey, dude, you know, tell me the truth about the UFOs," to his face. I want to know. You know, he followed through with it. And that Charlie Red Star, Tales of Charlie Red Star, I mean, that's epic. You know, it's not. I'm not saying he didn't get lucky, but to me, this is one of the most legitimate people out there. You know, and so is Stanton Friedman as well. I love listening to both of them.
Well, you know what? I know for our audience, okay, and this is where it's a real catch-22 for what we do. Our audience, when I've polled them, you know, the reason why they listen to Spaced Out Radio is they're tired of hearing the same people who are at the conferences every time, or on the other shows every single time, whose stories never seem to change. But every now and again, you have to bring on those people. And that isn't an insult to Grant or Stanton. That's what made them who they are.
Right.
You know, and that message has to come out every now and again. Like, it's great to get somebody on whom you've never heard about and you've never really researched. And they come on and they're so profound and eloquent. You know, I mean, sometimes they're not. Let's be honest. But when you get a guy like Grant who is just so passionate, I mean, I don't know how many words I spoke in those 2 hours, maybe a total of 30, you know, but that's okay. I'm like all of you. I get the beauty of just sitting back and listening, you know, and I love when that happens. I really do, because when somebody like Grant speaks, you know the information is legit because he's worked hard for it. You know what I'm saying?
You're not just saying that because he's Canadian, right?
Of course. No. But you know what? Grant has made a name for himself, not so much in Canada, but in the United States. I mean, you know, presidentialufos.com is a great site for information where he has insiders telling him what every president knows and how they're debriefed about UFOs and alien contact. Like, that's amazing. If more people took that topic seriously. I mean, we all say, where's disclosure? Where's the proof? The people are talking. We're just not listening.
That's it, man. You know, and that's why he was awarded the Researcher of the Year in 2012 and another award he got in 2013. It's because he's putting in the work, you know, and that's totally respectable. And nothing against any of the new up-and-comers. I know there's plenty out there doing it. It's just I'm excited to see that, because, you know, you talk about what you hate about the paranormal, and a lot of people are saying this field is dying. Man, I don't think so, because all I have to do is turn on a show like this one, listen to this guy talk again, and it ignites me. It gives me the bug again. Then I go out and start looking for others, and it's almost, you know how you get that bug when you want to play golf or go fishing? It's the same thing for me when it comes to research.
I got to tell you, I did something a little interesting today. Totally off topic. I went back with my buddy Mark to where we found a Sasquatch print almost a year ago, 11 months ago. And we actually went back a couple weeks ago, and I was surprised to see that the print was still there. Not castable or anything. But today we actually set up a gifting site there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How big is this print, man? I don't think I've ever seen it. I've never seen it.
The print that we got out of that area is about 12 inches by 7 inches.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
7 inches wide.
Yeah,
Good
man.
grief.
Yeah. And the best part about it is Mark is a professional tracker. He's a hunter and a tracker, and he's a tour guide that goes out and takes people out hunting up here. And he's been tracking animals for 30 years. And to watch his face when I showed him where that print was, he was just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? And he's like, in my 30 years, I've never seen this before. And I'm like, welcome to Sasquatch. So about 45, 50 feet from that area, there are some really weird, I don't want to call it structures because it's not a structure, but just some really weird placement, shall we say, of trees that almost looks like a teepee. And that all these trees, I mean, if you want to put a skeptical side on it, all these trees seem to fall in this one area, so it's like a half teepee kind of thing.
Yeah.
And plus there's, just the way the sticks are laid out on the ground. So, I don't know.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
I've seen that on a whole bunch of different Sasquatch investigations where they find these like half teepee-ish kind of Blair Witchy looking things out in the woods, man.
Yeah. No, I know. And it's one of those things where we literally we were walking around trying to find an area where to put this stuff. And when we found that area a year ago, it was kind of weird, like it just felt weird there. And when I showed Mark that place 2 weeks ago, the one tree in the middle where all these other trees are kind of leaning into, at about 10 feet high, there's these weird scrapes, like not claw marks, but chunks of wood missing, about 10, 11 feet up. And the sap, it makes the tree look very shiny. And there's no bear markings on there. Okay? Mark specifically looked for bear markings on there, did not see any, and there's two of them that kind of wrap around the tree, almost like somebody has pulled off the bark and scraped down on it, maybe to get some sap at 10, 11 feet high. So around that tree, that's where we set up our gifting site. So I talked to Butch Witkowski from UFO Cop, and I said, Butch, what do you recommend? He goes, friends of mine who have gifting sites, he goes, they found that shiny things are prevalent and get used. And he goes, don't be surprised that if the toys go missing. So what we did was I bought 5 little cars. I went down to the dollar store, bought 5 cars. Go to the dollar store, cost me $1.25 a car. I don't understand how that works, And so I bought 5 cars, and Butch recommended bright colors. So I got one in bright green. I bought 2 red ones. I bought 2 yellow ones, and then I got these plastic slinky type things that have like almost a tinsel type of shine wrapped around them. And one was purple, one was yellow. We put those on different trees. And then we grabbed some, like those little glass rocks that they're almost like marbles that you put at the bottom of a clear vase or something like that. We we cleared out a pit of dirt on the ground, and we placed them specifically. Took a bunch of photographs, because the theory behind that is what Butch was telling me, and Edie Kaito has told me, is they'll replace them. If Sasquatch finds them, they'll replace them. They'll take the car. It's almost like beg, borrow, or barter, or whatever. Beg, barter, or borrow, or whatever it's called. And so what Butch has seen happen through learning from his friends is, they may put a Hot Wheels car on a branch, and the next day, if you go back a week later and that car is gone, but there's like a bird nest there, or there's an acorn there, or it's been replaced with something. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's called, obviously, a gifting site.
Strange. That is strange.
The unfortunate part about it is we don't have any game cams to see if anybody is going to be playing with them. And it is going into hunting season. So the only thing that we can watch for is if something is taken. It could be from a chipmunk, it could be from a squirrel, it could be human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
But in talking to Butch about that, what he was saying is, he goes, if it is Sasquatch, they will likely leave something. So photograph the areas, and when you go back there, if anything is gone, check for if something has been left for you. If nothing's been left for you, you can assume it's something else, most likely people. But it's in a pretty remote area, and I don't think it would be in an area where a lot of people would hunt, because there's a lot of traffic along the road, but there's really no footprints in the area besides ours. So we're hoping that we're kind of safe with that.
Right. Do you know Butch? He sounds like the MacGyver of squatchers, man. He sounds like he knows what's up.
Oh, you made an SOR mistake right there, man.
What did I do this time?
We don't squatch around here.
Oh, great. Well, you know what? Here's something else I found out about. You can ask Dave. I used to not be in the whole cryptid thing, but I'm starting to figure out as I research it, all the really cool intellectuals are into Sasquatch. All the cool people are into Sasquatch.
Well, you got the hair for it.
I'm looking, and I've really started studying this myself, and I think the most convincing footage is, the Independence Day film. And people still think it's fake, but the one where it looks like he's carrying a baby? It's you know which one I'm talking about? It's like a famous film. It's like a really dark Bigfoot under it looks like some kind of evergreen tree, and he's holding a baby while he's walking through the woods.
I don't recall that one, man.
Well, how about this? What is your most convincing footage of Sasquatch that you think is the most convincing?
I still think it's a Patterson-Gimlin film.
The old classic one, huh?
The old classic one, and I'll tell you why. And I've said it on this show many a times, but for those who haven't heard, I will explain why. There's, besides the Zapruder film about JFK, there's no other film that has been scrutinized more than the Patterson-Gimlin film. And to me, there is only one piece of evidence that you need to see on that film that tells you whether or not it is real. Because if it is an ape suit, a monkey suit, and we got to think back into the 1960s here, not in the 2000s or 2010s where we are now. Okay, you have to go back and think in the 60s. If somebody created an ape-like suit, okay, yes, with the technology back then, you could pass that off. Okay, you could pass it off easily because the cameras weren't great. You could blame the cameras and everything. However, there's one piece of evidence on there that I've stated many times, and I'm sure it'll come up in the chat rooms before I say it, that to me gives it away. And that is the fact that there are breasts on that creature.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And the big thing for me is, if you are renting or you've made a homemade gorilla suit, are you really going to take the time to sew a pair of boobs on that suit.
Nah, man.
You're not. You're going to make it as simple as possible. Maybe the zipper goes up the back or up the front, whatever it is. But you are going to make that as cheaply as possible. You're not going to be like, over a couple of beers, hey, let's sew a pair of boobies on there. You're just not going to do that. It was a different time, a different era where people just did things more simplistically. You know what I'm saying? We're going back 50 years.
Yeah.
We're going back 50 years. People didn't think then like they did today. Sure, it was the free love era, but it was still a very religious era, too. You know what I'm saying? And
absolutely.
Women still had to go to the beach and, be covered up. They couldn't go to certain beaches with a bikini on. You know what I'm saying? It was a different time. And Patterson and Gimlin are not going to sew a pair of boobs on that outfit. You know what I'm saying?
Man, and that film, to me, even when you look at the arms are almost dragging the ground, and it's not like I don't know any man who has arms that disproportionate. I'm sure somebody does, but I don't. And you can see, the hand movement and everything. It's way too real, man. That cannot be faked. I guess it could in all truthness, but I think it's real, totally real.
I think it's totally real too. And the sad part about it is, I don't think there is going to be another Patterson-Gimlin type film. I bet you it's out there though, Joe. And as we were talking earlier this week, a couple of times, I think that footage, whether it's aliens, whether it's, we all crack on Stan Romanek about the alien at the window. 90% of the people out there say it's totally faked. I think I'm one of the 10% who said, yeah, I believe that happened because it happened to me. You know what I'm saying? I may not have had a camera, but that's how the legend of Carl began. Right?
Wow.
I bet you that footage is out there. But the person is too scared or too smart not to release it.
What do you mean by too smart? What do you mean by that?
Think of the ridicule. Did you see the ghost pictures that I sent out?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I talked about them on my show too because I was asking the guys, at the round table, do you guys think this is real?
Absolutely. Okay. So when I put those pictures out, I put on there your thoughts, and I got a lot of people out there, saying, wow, what a catch. Majority of people were very positive. But there's all these armchair computer skeptics out there who had, and most of them had legitimate questions. Okay? Legitimate situations, saying, I'm not there. Could you do this to prove to me it is right? I could. I don't want to because I don't have to prove it to you. But there were others out there saying, no, that's a cutout. That's a cardboard cutout, or that's a person, or that's whatever it is. That's part of the barn structure. It's an owl. I got it all. Doesn't even look like an owl, by the way. And I understand the critiquing.
It's so freaky looking, man.
I know. It's absolutely freaky. But the whole point is, okay, as I said on my show last night to Shane Saraway, I have a video of my daughter with a fairy in it. Not going to release.
That's cool.
I'm not going to release it.
Why? Why not?
2 reasons.
You're afraid the ridicule?
You know what? Majority of people who will view that video will say it's a bug.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a bug. Number one, I don't release it because I don't know how to Photoshop a video, and I don't want a teenage girl getting absolutely ridiculed on the internet. Actually, 2 of them.
Right on.
Okay?
I get that.
And I don't know how to pixelate a face. And no, I'm not giving the video to anybody else to do it for me. Okay?
I figured people were going to say, just email it to me. It's no big deal.
And trust me, I've had that. And it's no insult to them. Okay? But the second reason why I won't do it, Joe, is because people don't know my area. They don't. The majority of people out there that would view that video don't understand that in the middle of winter in Canada, when there's 2.5 feet of snow piled outside and it's minus 25, 26 degrees Celsius, there are no bugs.
Yeah, right.
Okay?
There's not much that move it around out
The
there
bugs
anyway.
are either hiding or they're in hibernation. Even inside, there are no bugs. Don't get bugs in winter here. Okay, I've talked
Man,
to
I would love to go through the woods of Canada. I'm not a big cold weather person at all. I'm a weenie when it comes to cold weather, but the more pictures I see of Canada in that area, I mean, there's got to be creatures in them woods. It's just too thick.
For sure. You know, Joe makes and you never know if it's Joe or Joe's Maine who's talking, but he says people will argue about anything. But you know, that picture was, because to me it was conclusive. And I even talked to one person about it. We were having quite the debate on it. And he's like, I need this, I need that. I said, well, you're not getting it. I said, I've already authenticated it. He goes, how can you authenticate it? And I said, I was there. I was not there for the photo, but I've been in that in that barn many a times. I know the people. I saw the photo 15 minutes after it was taken. I know the person who is running that side of the tour. There was nothing there. I don't need any more proof. I'm authenticating it. And then he tried to call me out, saying that I'm going down that path is dangerous, and I'm one of those people who makes the paranormal look bad because I'm authenticating something that hasn't been or tried to be reproduced yet. I told him point blank, I said, come on, you've been in this a long time. You're better than that. But it's funny, as I said to a few people privately, the people, you know who on your Facebook who you need to eliminate if they are critiquing you about your own credibility. Because with SOR, I'm not putting anything out there that's going to give my show a bad rap. You know, reputation is everything, and I think we got a pretty solid
you
reputation.
Worked really hard on this show too, man. I don't blame you one bit there.
You know, and the whole point that I'm getting at is that, Joe, you know, you can tell because the people who don't listen to you, because they're the ones critiquing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, well, that comes to a question of mine, because I always think about, all right, when I get my video or my evidence or whatever it is, when do you put it out there like you did with that picture? When do you put yourself out to slaughter? You know, that's probably what that guy doesn't understand is, you know, as soon as you release that video, regardless, there's going to be millions of people saying, no matter how true it is, that it's not, you know. It's just going to turn into a
one second here.
Fiasco.
I got a snark back here. Jake at #SpacedOutRadio. If you're going to come up with some snark, make it good stuff, okay? Make it good stuff. If you want to use the word sucks, I mean, what are we, 14 back in high school saying, "Oh, dude, that sucks." He goes, "Armchair computer skeptics, LMAO, yes, that's me, and we already know your fairy video sucks." How do you know? You've never seen it.
That's a pretty good question.
I'm just, Jake, I'm asking. So, I mean, I don't mind snark. I like good snark, but I'm going to grade you at about a D- on that one. So pick up your game if you want to be in the #SpacedOutRadio, please. That's what I'm asking.
Or just come out and say it. Like, just say, "I think you're a liar." Why would you just beat around the bush?
Yes, I'm lying about a video that my daughter caught. Because my daughter, when that video was taken, is 12 years old, and she's going to make something up like that.
Hence the reason why you're not putting it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this what you hate about the paranormal, Dave? Is this part of it? I don't want to give your speech away, but I'm not going to be there.
No, you know what? You'll have to listen to it. John T. at #SpaceOutRadio. Oh, come on, Dave. It's not bad to question trusted sources. You're taking this way too personally, Dave. Questions are good. Absolutely. Questions are good. Jake says at #SpaceOutRadio, because you would release it otherwise. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't release it. I've seen what happens out there with good evidence. I'm not going to release it. You know?
It gets slaughtered.
I'm damned. Jake, you got to understand, I am damned if I do and damned if I don't. Okay? I can sit here and talk about it, and I rarely talk about it. It's only been lately I've actually been talking about it. Lately is in about the last 10 months. Right? I'd get slaughtered over it. And I'm not worried about getting slaughtered over it. I'm more worried about my daughter. Right? And I don't want the video plastered all over the place. I mean, realistically, and let's take this video with a healthy dose of skepticism here, okay? If I didn't know the situation of where I live, the temperatures outside, the fact that there are no bugs in the middle of winter here flying around, okay, I would totally say it's a fly. Yes, Goddess Michelle at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. It's a question of protecting my daughter. Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
That should be obvious right now.
Absolutely. Right? But, I mean, the way it moves, it does not look like a fly. Best way to get away from that is not to mention it in the form of the beginning. Then there is no discussion. Exactly, Les. And that's why I kind of held off for a long time on it. Right?
I know for a fact if I put anything on the internet having to do with the paranormal, and my 13-year-old son, he would walk into my studio, and he don't usually come out here for any reason and say, please don't do that, Dad. I'm begging you.
Exactly. Don't. Well, and Jake makes a fair point here. Jake, continue it on, because this is good conversation, bro. This is very good conversation, so please keep it up. All right? And I don't want to make you think that I'm being crass with you, because I'm not trying to. I think this is great debate, great conversation. He says at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, it's fair to say, well, my daughter's in it, but then you go and claim it's a fairy when no one else can see it. I have let people whom I trust who deal with fairies see the video. Okay? I've let the crypto guru, Ronald Murphy, see it. He was blown away by it. And this gets to the whole point, how much evidence is actually out there that we aren't seeing because of the skeptical reaction. Right? And it's good to be skeptical. Trust me. Okay? It's great to be skeptical. We have to question things. We can't. CGI and YouTube have proven that we need to be skeptical about absolutely everything. But where do we take skepticism too far? Okay? Goddess Michelle says at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, I know what Dave's talking about. I've seen them with my kids. Fairies are real. My daughter, who caught this video, sees fairies. She sees fairies quite a bit.
Man, that's so cool.
Right? They've come to her window. She has gone outside, sat in her backyard, and just meditated and has had them land on her arms. She has no reason to BS me. You don't know her. Or when I say you, I mean you, the public, don't know her. You can think, hey, well, maybe he's just doing that to warrant some interesting attention. No, I don't BS on this show.
It's your kid.
Exactly. Exactly. My kid's not going to lie. I shouldn't say that. But our kids see things. Yeah. My 18-year-old, psychic as anything. Okay? My 14-year-old who has the fairies, she's seen ghosts since she was 7. Okay? My little guy who's 4, yeah, he sees too.
Yeah, and when they come to you crying,
absolutely,
or running to you crying because they saw something that was staring at them, a shadow, and it ran off. Man, come on. They're not in their sleep. You can't say, well, let's go out there and investigate what you saw. Let's take some, let's get some stuff out and run prints on the tree and everything. You can tell when your kid is telling you the truth.
Absolutely.
You can tell when they're lying too.
Absolutely. Absolutely you can. Right? And that is something that I just won't get into.
I'm sorry I said Squatch. I think that's what started this whole thing.
It's your fault for saying Squatch.
My bad.
I'll tell you why I don't like the word Squatch. And I banned it from this show. Okay? Is I got to talk to legendary Bigfoot researcher John Bindernagel. He's like 84, 85 years old in... Hold on, Jake's responding here. Listen, I know I don't know your daughter. I'm not saying she's a liar, but I would never take kids as good witnesses. Well,
Shoot.
I know my children. You don't. You know, do you have kids, Jake? Do you have kids? You know when your kids are BSing you or not. Anybody who's a parent, if you're, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You know. And, I'll leave it at that. Because that could go down an entirely different road that we don't want to go down.
Well, I mean, look at what they did. Look what happened to these people when they put the Patterson video out. Let's just take evidence, for example. They put it out. They're still 50 years down the road. They're still being slaughtered for it. That's the kind of stuff that happens to you.
Absolutely.
Hey, weren't you that girl on YouTube in that fairy video? 10 years, 20 years later. Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy. You know, that's how powerful the internet is now and the media,
So anyways, I'm chatting with John Bindernagel, and I'm telling him my Sasquatch story. This is in 2015 at a paranormal conference put on by my good friend Glenn Ferguson and his wife. And I asked him point blank, I said, John, what do you think of all these TV shows? And he gave, he just kind of was like, well, it's all for entertainment and everything like that. I said, well, what do you think of them cutting down the word Sasquatch to Squatch? And he took a big, deep breath and released a big sigh. And basically, in a nutshell, said, that he didn't like it. He felt that one word has killed all of his years of research in trying to get this subject into some sort of legitimate scientific conversation, and the word Squatch killed it. And I felt bad for him. I mean, this is a guy has been investigating Sasquatch for 60, 70 years. He started as a teenager. He's now in his 80s. Could still run laps up a mountain and back around you and I, man. That's how good a shape he's in. Right?
That's pretty impressive.
Okay, Jake says, nothing personal, Dave. I'm just not going to start believing in fairies just because you have an unreleased video. You don't have to, Jake. That's the beautiful part about it. That's the beautiful part about it. You don't have to. Sailor Twift, move on! No. We're having a good conversation. You bring back at John Porter, and I'll think about moving on.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, and by the way, just so you know, people, up here we don't have lightning bugs.
Really?
No.
That's kind of sad.
No. So, anyhow, moving on. So that's why I banned the word Squatch from this show.
Well, you'll never hear me say it again.
Good. Because, when you got a guy like John Bindernagel who has been doing this for a hell of a lot longer than you and I have been alive, almost combined. Right?
Yeah. I imagine it stings when he hears it too.
Yeah. I mean, the ridicule that people now give because everybody wants to jump on the jive, right? It's ridiculous. So that's why we got rid of it. Out of respect to John, we don't do it. Jake says, it's a bad argument to have in this format, so I'll just drop it.
No, I mean, it's real, though.
Sailor Twift. It's not BSing or lying. Kids are programmed to figure out what you want to hear. You must not be a parent either. So, we'll leave it at that.
And I'm not trying to drag this on, but the elementals like, fairies, sprites, undines, fire salamanders, that stuff has been in ancient lore and many books for a long time, and it's not, and I don't think it's just because people wanted to keep the same story going. I think there's something to it.
You know what? I'm going to do this. Jake, if you want to call me up, I'll give you my number. We'll bring you on the air. We can have this discussion. Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll give you the number. You can call into the studio. And, yeah, I agree, Muji. We should ban the word gangsta, too. Let me just get through my Paracon speech, and then we'll ban it. Yeah, that'll be on the ban list, too. So, it's very, very cool.
God, but Canadians are killing me.
Why? What are we doing?
I can't say gangster. I can't say squats. What can I not say? I need a list. I need a Canadian list of words I'm not allowed to say.
Don't say oot and a boot, because that's East Coast. That's East Coast. Right?
I promise. I won't say that.
So while we're out at the gifting site today, we decided to take a drive. Decide to take a drive down the trail, see if we can find anything else. Dude, I saw the biggest wolf track today that I've ever seen before.
Really? How big was it?
It was... here's the stupid part. You would ask me that. I'm holding up my hands to the microphone. It's this big, man. It's this big.
I can't see your hand, Dave.
No. Apparently there's a little bit of Spreaker issue. Some people are losing the signal. I do apologize. It is Spreaker. Okay, somebody at Mr. Skeptic, because I'm Canadian, wants to hear the word hoser. Hey, you hoser. How you doing?
That's a Canadian word, hoser?
Yeah. Come on, Jake, call in. Don't say maybe another time. Let's have this conversation, man.
He don't really open the phones up.
Jake, I never open up the phone lines, man. I haven't opened up the phone lines since my birthday, and barely anybody called. Okay? I'm opening up the phone lines to you, my friend. You know?
Dude, your birthday party, a lot of people call. I called in on that.
I know. I'm just feeling, self-deprecating right now. Come on, Jake. I'm egging you on here. I want to have this convo. I'll let you off the hook if you want.
Joe Monk said he would call in, but his voice is too sexy for radio.
It is. I have talked to Joe on the air before. Not only does he have great hair, but he also has, I always say I got a face for radio and a voice for print. Joe truly does have a voice for radio and a face for television. He's a gorgeous man. I'm comfortable enough in my manhood to say Joe is a good-looking guy. He really is.
Got the black and white, profile. It looks like something you turn in, so you're trying to get a role on a Hollywood show or something.
I know.
My mug shots, whatever they're called. They're not called mug shots, but you know what they're called.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be able to hear this when you do this speech. Are you guys going to be live on anything while you're doing this, like YouTube or network?
I'm going to Facebook Live it. If you want to play it on KTLK, you sure can if you want. That's up to you.
I probably will.
Yeah. I believe the times... Eric Cooper, where are you? I need the times for the Paracon. Hold on. Got to find it here. I believe I'm speaking from 4:30 to 6 Pacific. Hold on. I got the schedule right here. Pardon me. 4:20 to 5:50. 4:20 to 5:50 is when I speak. So I got 90 minutes to speak about why I hate the paranormal. which I actually do love the paranormal, so I'm going to contradict myself there. But I'm just going to go over it a little bit. Just some of my observations as being a part of Spaced Out Radio, and what I've seen, and what I've heard, and what I've learned. I mean, there are, we talk about how brilliant the researchers are. I mean, you have guests, I have guests, and we talk about, a lot of them are very smart people, but I don't think, we give credit enough where credit is due to the people who are in the audience, especially in the chat rooms or on Twitter, for, the knowledge that they bring and the questions that they bring as well. It's a very, very smart crowd. And, the one thing I like about them, even like with Jake here, or the other day I got into it a little bit with Mr. Skeptic, they're not afraid to call you out, and say, open up your mind, or close up your mind, or don't be seeing everything through rose-colored sunglasses. I dig that.
Yeah, that's great.
That. Because what it does, I'll tell you what it does, is it keeps you honest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It keeps you honest, because you can't play games, and there's so many people in this field, and Joe, you know who they are. Okay, we all know who they are, who will do anything, say anything to try and make a name for themselves. I don't have to do that. Never had to do that. Don't have to do that. But the whole point that I'm saying is, you can tell who's smart and who's not. Whether it's the guest, whether it's the host, whether it's the audience members. Right?
Yeah,
and there are some
sure.
brilliant people that you can't, if you want to be successful in this, you can't pull the wall over people's eyes. You can't. And so for Jake, for Jake or Skeptic or anybody else calling me out on it, they're allowed. I don't mind. I may fire back. I may call them out on weak snark or whatever it is. But they're allowed,
But you're being real about it, too. I mean, the entertainers, and there are some just strictly, and entertainment is a part of this,
absolutely,
this field. But there are some that, man, when you question them, they'll just ban you out of their room, and in the next show they're going to call you, these negative people, because they asked a question, really, and you don't do that, and I'm glad you don't do that. It's cool to see that you're willing to take on. And is snark a Canadian word too? You're the first person I've heard call it that. Snark. That's not a Canadian word.
I got that from the Twitter crowd. I don't know where it came from. It's like being snarky. It's just a short version of snarky.
I'm still trying to figure out the password thing.
Exactly.
I'm going to go into that again. It makes my southern head spin.
What's the password? Exactly.
Do you win something? Do you get what do you get?
Exactly.
Everybody's laughing at me now, Dave.
I know.
That's why you brought me on here, isn't it?
I want to break down my crowd, okay? If you don't mind. And then I'll explain to you the password after the show.
All right.
My crowd is this. I got my loyalists in the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. They've been with me for about 18 months. Bill, Joe, Gail, Claudia, Robert, Vivian, Bob, who am I missing? Gloria, Ron. They've been with me for 18, 19 months. Then on the other side, I have my Spreaker chat room where every day there's somebody new in there. But it's one of those things where it's really cool, to see the regulars. Like every night, there's John, there's Preacher, there's Teresa, Tessa, BTO, Trip, Ron, Kevin, who's got an amazing beard, man. You got to see Kevin. Kevin's got that's at least a 10-inch beard right there, 8 to 10-inch beard right there.
Easy Top style.
Exactly. Then you have the Aussie contingent of Steve, Robert, Andy, and then you got new people coming in, all the time. And, so it's great there. And then I've learned with the Twitter crowd, they have taught me so much as well, because they're about wanting entertainment. Sure, they're going to be snarky. Sure, they're going to call you out on what they feel is BS. Sure, they're going to take pot shots. But you know what? They make it so much fun. They do. Do I get frustrated by it sometimes? Sure I do. I'm human. Sometimes I do. Right? But there are times where they're going to call people out who deserve to be called out. And if I deserve to be called out, they're going to nail me on it. So at what point do you say, no, I'm gonna block you? Like I know there's people on Twitter and in the chat rooms, they're like, we're gonna block you. We're gonna block you. Or they've been blocked from other shows. I'm not doing that.
For asking questions.
Why?
That's so crazy. I've seen it before.
The only time I will get really pissed off is if it becomes personal. Okay? If it becomes absolutely personal. That's the only time I will get upset. But, I've had to kick a couple of people out of my Spreaker chat room before because, they were attacking other listeners.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. It comes with the chat room.
Well, you know what? The beautiful part of the Spreaker chat or the Space Out Radio chat is I got control, right? And people come here because we want it to be a safe place. We want it to be a place where everybody's opinion matters. Everybody has the ability to have an opinion and not get ridiculed for that opinion. So I try to run a pretty tight ship on both of those, because that's not fair. But every room is different. The Revolution Radio room is much different from the Spreaker room. Spreaker room is much different than Twitter. Twitter's its own universe, man. I don't even know what they're smoking in there. But one
it's
day,
a whole nother world.
One day I want to go in there and snark myself, and then the SOR Space Traveler, they're the people who've been with me the longest. And
a long time ago, man, when I first listened to your show, when you had the old logo up, man, it was it's almost like last winter. I was thinking late at night, I'm tinkering around in my studio, I'm wired for sound, I want to talk to somebody about some of this stuff that's on my mind, and I turned on Spaced Out Radio, and I was like, wow, look at all these people in here, and it was the coolest conversation ever. And the first thing that happened was you jumped out and said, hey, man, welcome to the show. There was like 200-300 just bubbles popping up, and you noticed that I was new, and you was like, thanks for coming out, man, what's going on? Talk to me right off the bat. And I was hooked from then on. I mean, this crowd is really cool, especially for a good conversation.
Well, you know what though, but what's wrong with treating people like they're human? I mean, here's the thing that I look at, and, I'm going to put my rose-colored sunglasses on here for a second, okay? But do you know how much I take seriously the fact that someone would take time out of their day to spend it with me? Look, you could give me money, you could give me food, gas for my car, you could do my laundry, whatever it is, okay? Whatever it is you want to do, man. And that's great. But to give someone your time when it's so limited, especially in today's society, man, there is no greater gift. There is no greater gift at all. And I continually feel blessed about that. I really do. And on that note, man, I'll give you the final word, because we're going to shut this thing down. Thanks for joining me, Joe.
Hey, no problem. By the way, Joe Monk says he's got a picture of you in your underwear. He's been with you so long.
You know what's really cool is Joe had this incredible beard. He shaved it off. He put it in a Ziploc bag. And it's being sent to me starting next week. It makes its road trip, and I'm going to put his beard up in my studio. That's loyal. That is loyalty and dedication right there. Joe Monk. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. Tomorrow night on the program, I'm bringing in the Forest Moon Paracon speakers because we speak on September 23rd from Concrete, Washington. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be joined by Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, Eric Markham, our resident scientist. He's speaking about the science of the paranormal. Christina George, Mike Moore, our Keith Andrews, and myself. We're going to have a good conversation tomorrow night about the Paracon. It's a week away. I can't wait to get down there. They got a really cool haunted bar down there called The Hub. Tequila is cheap. It's like $3.25 a shot for Patron. God bless them. God bless America when that happens. I want to say thank you to my team, Everett Thiemer and Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Tim Doyle, Jolene Lammers on web design, Catherine James, who does our social media, our great announcer, Bob Davis, our Director of Business Development, Kim Gandy, LMC Media, Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and soon there's a new member of this team coming forward. I will introduce her very, very soon. In fact, I'm going to be talking to her in just a couple of minutes from now. I look forward to it. This is a power move for us, and we're going to make this happen, make this thing grow. Thank you to everyone in your chat rooms, Twitter first. You guys are awesome. I love the conversation. Keep it coming. Because you guys are the best. You're the reason why we do this. You're the reason why you are spreading this around for us, making us bigger, better. Thank you so much from the bottom of all of our hearts here about the mighty SOR. Mr. Bumblefoot's little brother is watching, is closing out. I'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. B, you need to take us home. It's that time. Have a good one. See you tomorrow.